Hey y'all, I just wanted to go, hey Kez Chick, good morning. Good to see ya. I just wanted to go live a little bit early because they're gonna start at 9 and I kind of thought that they would be late today, but they're not, which I'm pleasantly surprised about. And so, hey Mo, hey Tony, good to see you guys. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So, real quick, we have just enough time for me to show you guys a recap, okay? This is going to recap essentially everything, not everything, but most of the things that you need to know going into the trial today. And then we'll talk a little bit and then we'll do the whole, streaming the trial. Okay? All right, ready? Here we go.
I beat the hell out of them.
It's all this stuff that's on the news. I just found my cousin with a gunshot wound.
Okay, sir, is she alive?
No.
Police arrested 6 people in connection with the heinous crime.
The youngest Wagner son, Jake, was in court today. It is his custody dispute over a daughter with victim Hannah Rhoden that investigators say prompted the murders.
As George Wagner IV stands trial, his mother Angela and younger brother Jake are expected to testify against him.
Okie dokie. So there you have it. So this is day 1, Mo. Yes, ma'am. So, basically the reason why this specific, first of all, this has been a long time coming. Okay. The crime occurred in 2016, April 22nd, 2016 to be exact. And, so it took Ohio investigators 2 years to even get to the charging point, right? So arresting point, excuse me. So they ended up arresting, 6 members of the Wagner family. And when that happened, what they had found basically was that it was due to, of all things, a Facebook post. And hold on a second, I'm trying to do too many things at one time. It was due to a Facebook post that Hannah Rhoden had written. Okay. And basically what that Facebook post was, it was she and Jake, the Rhoden's youngest son, were like having in a custody dispute over their 2-year-old daughter. Okay. And he wanted her to sign some type of custody agreement. And she wrote on Facebook, Jake wants something to the effect of, Jake wants me to sign a custody agreement and it will be over my dead body. Okay. And that's what kicked this whole thing off. There were silencers used. I mean, honestly, from the at the very beginning of the crime, when the bodies were discovered, they really thought it was a professional hit, in that the victims were still, and most of them were still in their beds. And none of the children were harmed. There were children in the homes, but none of them were harmed. And the thing is that 3 of the crime scenes, right, were on the same property, but they were like spaced out. That's what makes it so that's why they thought it was professional, because again, they were spaced out and nobody was alarmed. Do you know what I mean? So, and then also they found like marijuana growing at 3 of the homes. And so they thought maybe the cartel. And then after a while, the Wagner family, after this happened, they moved to Alaska. And then just continued investigating. And they finally put it all together. And then in 2018, they charged the family members. And then on the anniversary of the crime, Jake Wagner took a plea deal. But what's interesting about this plea deal, hey, Southern lady, good to see you. Good to see all of you guys. Let me just say hi to everybody. Let me say hi to everybody, because that's just rude. Hi, Kez Chick. Hi, Mo. Hi, Tony. Hi, Shmina. Hi, Amelia Sparkles. Hello, Chicken Lady. Good morning. It's so good to see everybody. I've been waiting for this forever, Southern Lady. Hello. Okay, I don't think I missed anybody. All right, so this is why this trial is particularly interesting, because Jake and Angela, which is the mother and the son, must testify to the state's satisfaction, right? Mainly, this is Jake's portion. He must testify to the state's satisfaction in this trial and in the trial against his father. That trial's coming up too, okay? In order for the death penalty to be removed, which is why they had to, when they were selecting the jury, they had to be death penalty qualified. Now, I would love to get my hands on Jake Wagner's plea deal, because I would like to know exactly what is to the state's satisfaction. Because what's interesting, well, good, Mo, I try to be. Because what's interesting about this is when Jake Wagner confessed, okay, and it's recorded, Jake Wagner says that George Wagner IV, while he was at the crime scenes, he did not pull the trigger. So what's going to be interesting about this is that testimony, because to tell the truth, that's what he would have to tell, right? Now, according to the Ohio murder statute, you can be present and do nothing to help. And that makes you part of the conspiracy and therefore eligible to be charged with the same level of crime as if you had actually pulled the trigger. But the defense says their hands are tied in this situation, because if they do their job, which is to cross-examine Jake effectively, it puts Jake's plea deal and it puts George Wagner IV's plea deal, or not plea deal, but his and his father's death penalty in question, right? So in jeopardy. So if the state finds that Jake Wagner does not testify to their satisfaction, George third and fourth, the death penalty will remain on the table. So this is a very huge conundrum. Thank you, Southern Lady. And if you wouldn't mind doing that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And I want to discuss it more in detail tonight, if you don't mind. If you would email it to me, if you get all the permissions, because I feel like if you get it now and you send it to me now and I put it up now, the minute I start going through it and getting into it, that's when the freaking trial is going to start. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want you guys to miss any of this. I have been waiting. Thank you so much, Southern Lady. You are a gem. I appreciate that so much. See, everybody working together. I appreciate that so much. But yeah, I feel like as soon as I start talking about it, boom, they're gonna immediately start the trial, and then we're gonna miss. And I've been waiting for this trial forever, because the last thing that I watched on this was the Oxygen special, and I feel like the Oxygen special came out before the arrests. Because I feel like when I watch the Oxygen, and I've gone back to try to find it, and just as an aside, I have all the things, which I'm gonna cut cable soon because I really don't need it and I don't watch it. But oh, you got those too? Oh my gosh, Southern Lady, you guys are the best. Okay, so the thing that I remember watching, I went back to watch it. I have all the things, right? And Discovery Plus, all NBC, well, it's Peacock, yada yada yada, right? Something, no big deal. I'll just go to Oxygen and watch it. No. Hi, Nonstop Mom. Good morning. They pulled it. Like, bruh, you knew the trial was coming. Why would you pull it? That was on their part, not well played, ma'ams and sirs, because people were going to be looking for it. But anyway, so anyhow, yeah, like that's how it sort of left off, if I remember right, like a cliffhanger. They had suspected, but they didn't know. And so I'm very, 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 very interested in how this is all going to play out. And oh, is this your one, Southern Lady? Okay. I get it. Because you guys know which one is my one. Okay. All right. I know how it is. So, speaking of the one, Benny Keys had a live yesterday, and he had drone footage over Robin Hood Hills as it is now. Your one case, Southern Lady, that you just that you know all the things about, and you've really, really, really followed. That's your one. Maybe you have more than one. Okay. So anyway, Benny Keys, go check his channel out. I'll put his Shamita, do you have his link, babe? If you do, will you post it for me? Please. Anyway, he used drone footage to fly over Robin Hood Hills. Okay. So if you want to know what the crime scene looks like now, go check out his channel. Also, if any of you guys know Benny and have any pull with him at all, would you please let him know that your girl emailed him from the Blind Justice Podcast Gmail account and would desperately like to speak to him? Desperately, but not, well, desperately is probably not a good word to use. I would very much like to speak to him, but I'm not going to beg. Yeah. So Let me see what they're doing. I'm going to add this to the stream, but I'm going to mute it. Oh, I like this graphic. Well, look at you, Court TV. Y'all stepping it up. It's a good graphic. Yeah, everybody knows my one. What happened, Kez Chick? You want to change your membership, babe? I'm not going to be a stalker as far as Benny goes. I feel like Benny covers a lot of cases and he probably gets inundated with emails, but my email is not. I don't want to be a jerk and be like, my email's the most important email. It's not the most important email, but it is an important email. And how fun would it be if we had Benny over here? He makes me laugh. Benny, I just enjoy him so much. So, oh, you want to change to Kookaloo? Okay, I think Kez Chick, what you have to do is wait until the beginning of the month to change it. I don't think you can change it mid-month to go down. I think you can go up, but you can't go down. I think. I don't know. I never changed my membership. I usually just keep it. Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to make some more stickers for the or not stickers, emojis for the channel, but I feel like I had to get like more members to make more emojis. Like YouTube caps you at certain points. So yeah, kind of annoying, but whatever. No, Southern Lady, I'm not on. I mean, I am on Facebook, but that's not my Facebook name. Are you in are you on in blah, 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 I can't even think. Are you in True Psych Ward? Are you in that group? Because I'm in that group and I can or just, you know what, babe, just send, if you wouldn't mind, just send me the link to the Facebook group through an email and I'll just join. And you'll know who it is. You'll know when it's me because it's not that difficult to figure out. What? Oh, okay, Kez Chick. Yeah, see, my Facebook is my real name too. So just email me the link if you wouldn't mind when you get a sec, not this second, but whenever you get a second and I'll go in there and you'll be able to know who it is. Believe me, it's not all that clever. Oh wait, that's not what I wanted to highlight. Okay. So this is what's happening, Southern, Kez Chick. There are certain debit credit cards that don't automatically update, which is very annoying on YouTube. So whenever your membership rolls around to renew, certain ones automatically update, right? They just take it. And then other ones, you have to approve it. So that then starts it all over again. And I don't know how they do it, like how they change or decide which ones are going to be an automatic update versus the ones that are going to be you have to renew it every month, which I don't really. They need to get a better system going because the truth is your emoji or not. Yeah, your emoji and your the little icon next to your name is supposed to change the longer you've been a member. And come on, YouTube, get it together. This is your one job. I mean, I know you have other jobs because you're part of Google, but for reals, that's you got to keep up with the perks. YouTube. Watch them slow my stuff down now because I said that. I'm sure. Oh yeah, I'm sure I'll want to go digging when I get in because there is And I thought about doing this last night, like just going through all of it. But I'm not going to lie. I got distracted last night. I was watching Game of Thrones, which is not really Game of Thrones, but House of the Dragon. And then I also watched the Elvis movie because it came out on HBO Max. And yeah. Also, I overslept this morning and I was running around like a crazy person. And it's my youngest son's birthday today. So they listen every once in a while, like they'll skim through. So happy birthday, Bubs. I love you. Yeah. I have two Virgos. My youngest daughter was on the 1st, and then my youngest son is on the 12th. And then I have a Scorp and a Sag. My oldest son is a Scorp, and my oldest daughter is a Sag Scorp cusp. She's the very first day of Sagittarius, and ole mole, she shows both. Like, she'll be super aloof the way that a Sagittarius is, and then sting you with that Scorpio. Yeah. So awesome. Thank you, Southern Lady. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. While we're all just chilling and kicking it and chit-chatting away, if you guys wouldn't mind giving your girl a thumbs up, helps keep me in the algorithm. Okay, here we go. See what the judge has to say.
This is the case of State of Ohio.
Oh my gosh.
Wagner, the fourth defendant, case number 2018 CR 155. Today is September 12, 2022, and we continue proceedings in the trial of the matter. Good morning to the jury. Glad to see you're all here. Present today is the defendant with his attorneys John Parker and Richard Nash. The state of Ohio is represented by Rob Junk, prosecuting attorney, and special prosecutors Angela Canepa and Andrew Wilson. Also, Ryan Scheiderer of the Ohio BCI&I is present. It's the court's understanding that the state has designated Mr. Scheiderer to stay at counsel table as a representative of the law enforcement agency involved.
Thank you,
in the
Nonstop
investigation.
Mom.
Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Today, the court will give some preliminary instructions to the jury, after which there will be opening statements by counsel. Prior to doing that, are there preliminary matters that need to be brought to the court's attention?
Your Honor, as we discussed previously, both parties are moving for a separation of witnesses, which is traditional in any case. But we have agreed that that shall go into effect after opening statements at the first time somebody testifies.
That's correct.
All right. The court will grant that joint motion and order a separation of witnesses. That means that, and that will be effective after opening statements. Anyone who is to be called as a witness in this case may not be present in the courtroom following opening statements until called to testify. Any witness who does testify may not discuss his or her testimony with any other prospective witness. Violations of that order can result in sanctions, including the exclusion of testimony. It's the court's understanding, too, that counsel wishes that to apply to any.
I do too. I think it's Angela.
Prevent any.
She's the one that saw the
from
Facebook post.
Listening to or reading anything about any
Oh,
other testimony.
wow, chicken lady. I'll talk quiet. How about that? Is this okay? It is low, but I'll talk quiet so I don't blow your eardrums out. I guess chicken lady's subtle way of saying that I'm a loud talker.
Testimony.
It was Angela that saw the Facebook post. It was Angela that screenshot the Facebook post, and that is what kicked all of this off. So yes,
the court does have some preliminary instructions.
So I'll
ladies
just
and
talk
gentlemen, that I
very
want to,
soft.
advise you of.
Okay.
It may help you follow, if you follow these instructions, it may help you in performing your duties as jurors in this case. Jury service is somewhat strange, I'm sure, to all of you. Even if you've served as a juror before, it's not something you've done often, so an explanation may be helpful. Those who participate in a trial must do so in accordance with established rules. And that's true of
Nice
witnesses,
chicken
it's
lady's
true
way of
the
saying, girl,
lawyers,
you talk loud.
It's true of the judge, and also true of the jury. The lawyers present the evidence according to
Oh, I'm going
those
to
rules.
enjoy it.
The
I
judge
know I will.
enforces the rules and determines what evidence may be admitted.
Oh, and you know what else I
You,
was thinking
will
about
be the
too?
sole judges of the facts,
Part of the reason I
credibility
talk
of the
loud is
witnesses,
because I can't,
and the weight
you know how
to be
you have
given
an
to
inner
their
monologue
testimony.
where you can hear yourself?
Now,
Well,
later,
when I wear
the
these
court will
specific
instruct you
headphones,
as to
I
the
don't
law
have that as
that applies to the
go-
case.
as
You
good.
apply that law
It's
to
not
the
even how you
facts as
say that, but
find
you know
them.
what I mean.
It is your
And
sworn duty to apply
it's
the
from
law as given to you
my
by
mom
the
told
court.
me this was going to happen. She's be
The
like,
procedure
I used
for
to,
trial
listen to
is
my
as
music
follows.
super
First,
loud, but I did it
counsel
with,
will
like my
outline what they
Walkman back in the
expect the
day.
evidence to
And
be.
my mom would be like,
These
you're going to
then
have
are
trouble
referred to
hearing when you
opening
get
as
older.
opening
And I'd be like,
statements of
nah, I'll be all
how
right.
they're referred to, and these opening
Yeah,
statements
I have
of
trouble
counsel
hearing now that I'm
are
older.
not evidence, but they are a preview of the claims of each party, and they are designed to help you follow the evidence as it is presented. Then the state offers
I know my
its
mom is
evidence.
up in heaven just
Now,
laughing at all the
defendant may,
things that
but
she was
need
right
not
about, that I
offer
have to
evidence.
admit she was right about.
If the defendant presents evidence, then the state may present rebuttal evidence. The trial then concludes with the arguments of counsel, sometimes referred
Oh,
to as
thank you
summation.
guys. I still
Then the
love you guys
instructions of
too.
law given to you by the court, and thereafter you will deliberate concerning your verdict. It is important that you be fair and attentive throughout the trial. Do not discuss this case among yourselves or with anyone else. This includes family, friends, and media. You must not post or read anything about this case on the internet or any electronic device, including cell phones. This would include blogs and social networking sites such as MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, and others. Any such discussion, if discovered, could lead to a mistrial and would severely compromise the rights of the parties to a fair trial. Do not permit anyone to discuss this case with you or in your presence. Do not form or express any opinion on this case until it is finally submitted to you. It may perhaps be more difficult for you to understand that you may not discuss this case among yourselves.
I'm just so
until
glad
it
to
is
see all
finally
of you
submitted
girls
to you.
back, all you guys back.
The reason is
So
that
good.
you will
All my
receive
familiars.
the opening statements of counsel, the evidence, the closing arguments of counsel, and the law in that order. And it would be unfair to discuss the case among yourselves before you receive everything necessary for your decision. You should explain this rule prohibiting the discussion of the case to your family and friends. When the trial is over and your jury duty is completed, you will then be released from this admonition, and you at that time may, but are not required to, discuss the case and your experiences as a juror. You are instructed not to talk to the attorneys, parties, witnesses, or anyone else that participates in the trial. Likewise, they may not talk with you. You must not talk with anyone else about this case during the trial. If anyone should attempt to discuss this case with you, report the incident to me or to one of the court's employees immediately. Do not investigate or attempt to obtain additional information about this case from any source outside the courtroom. Now, this includes revisiting any of the places that you were taken on the jury view. You were instructed not to view pictures obtained on your own, including those obtained on the internet, such as Google Earth and others.
Good morning, Mrs. O.
Viewing the scene in an unauthorized manner, viewing pictures or other materials without the benefit of explanation in court, is unfair to the parties who need you to decide this case solely on the evidence presented in the courtroom. You are prohibited from performing your own experiments and conducting your own research, including internet research. Such information may be incomplete, inaccurate, or irrelevant to the issues in the case. It is vital that you carefully follow these instructions. The reason is simple. The law requires that you consider only the testimony and evidence you hear and see in the courtroom. You may consider and decide this case only upon the evidence received at the trial. If you acquire any information from an outside source, you must report it immediately to the bailiff of the court or one of the employees of the court who are performing bailiff duties, and they will report it to me. You are instructed not to read, view, or listen to any report in the newspaper, radio, or television on the subject of this trial. Do not permit anyone to read or comment upon them to you or in your presence.
Thanks, sweetie. I
Media
appreciate that.
reports may be incomplete or inaccurate. You may consider and decide this case only upon the evidence received at the trial. If you acquire any information from an outside source,
Okay,
you
Amelia,
must
I hope your
not
little kid
report
feels
it to other
better.
jurors, and you must disregard
Kiddo.
it in your deliberations. In addition, you shall report and should report the outside source of information to one of the court's employees or to the judge at the first opportunity. All or portions of
Oh
these
boy,
proceedings
Southern
may be
lady, of
broadcast,
course.
photographed, and or recorded by members of the news media. You must not allow this fact to divert your attention from
Well,
this case
this
or
has
to
been
interfere
George's
with your duties
uniform
as jurors.
through every
Further,
proceeding. He's
you are
wearing a
not allowed to
vest.
talk to members of the media
He pretty much
during
looks
this
trussed
trial.
up. It's,
Any violation of these orders may require a new trial and may
I
subject
don't know, it
those
looks, I
involved
think
to
he's
sanctions,
shackled.
including contempt of court. The court
Just an
will permit,
FYI,
haven't asked
the
counsel
jury
about
has
this, but it
already
would be
visited
typically
the
the
crime
court's
scenes.
position that note-taking should be permitted in a trial of this length. Is that acceptable with counsel for each side?
It is, Your Honor. It is, Your Honor.
The court will permit those jurors who desire to take notes during the trial to do so. We'll provide you with those notepads, and we'll probably do that even prior to opening statement. No juror is required to take notes. The taking of notes is entirely a matter of personal choice for each juror. The fact that the notes taken by a juror support his or her recollection in no way makes his or her memory more reliable
Good
than
morning,
that of
and
the
5,
jurors
6,
who do not
7, 8.
take notes. Do not let the taking of notes divert your attention from what is being said or is happening in the courtroom during the trial. Some persons believe that taking notes is not helpful because it may distract a person's attention and interfere with hearing all the evidence.
It looks like he should be
All
carrying
notes
around
are
a
confidential
charcuterie.
and for the consideration of the jury only. Each note taker will leave his or her notes on his or her chair during the recesses and until deliberations begin. At that time, you will be allowed to take your notes to the jury room. All notes will be returned to the court reporter for destruction after the time the jury is discharged, or at the time the jury is discharged. Jurors will not be permitted to ask questions of the witnesses. It is the responsibility of the lawyers to present all the evidence necessary for you to decide the issues in this case. If during the trial issues arise that would affect your ability to pay attention and sit as a fair and impartial juror, you must explain the matter to the bailiff of the court or one of the employees of the court acting as bailiffs, who will inform me. At any time, if you cannot hear a witness, an attorney, or me, please make that fact known immediately by raising your hand. As to each offense charged in the indictment, the defendant is presumed innocent unless and until his guilt is established beyond a reasonable doubt. As to each offense charged in the indictment, the defendant must be acquitted unless the state produces evidence which convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt of every essential element of each
Thank you,
such
Southern Lady.
offense
I
charged.
appreciate that. You're so helpful. You guys
I've
are
used
just
the
the best.
term
This is why I
reasonable
say we
doubt,
have the best
so
chat
at this time
in
I
all
will
the
define that term for
YouTubes.
you. Reasonable doubt is present when the jurors, after they have carefully considered and compared all the evidence, cannot say they are firmly convinced of the truth of the charge. It is a doubt based on reason and common sense. Reasonable doubt is not mere possible doubt, because everything relating to human affairs or depending on moral evidence is open to some possible or imaginary doubt. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof of such character that an ordinary person would be willing to rely and act upon it in the most important of the person's own affairs. You are the sole judges of the facts, the credibility of the witnesses, and the weight of the evidence. To weigh the evidence, you must consider the credibility of witnesses. You will use the tests of truthfulness which you use in your daily lives. These tests include the appearance of each witness upon the stand, the witness's manner of testifying, the reasonableness of the testimony, the opportunity the witness had to see, hear, and know the things about which the witness testified, the witness's accuracy of memory, frankness or lack of it,
Spitters or quitters.
intelligence, interest, and bias, if any, together with all the facts and circumstances surrounding the testimony. Use these tests and assign to each witness's testimony such weight as you think proper. You are not required to believe the testimony of any witness simply because the witness was under oath. You may believe or disbelieve all or any part of the testimony of any witness. It is your duty to decide what testimony to believe and what testimony not to believe. The testimony of one witness,
Just
if believed by
FYI, the
you,
trial was
is
put on
sufficient to
hold
prove
a
any
week due to
disputed fact.
sickness. I don't know who's coughing,
I
but
may
get them out of
remind you
there.
of
We
these
don't need any
instructions
more
from time to
delays.
time. If I overlook that, however, they nevertheless apply to your
Nobody's like the
conduct
West
throughout
Memphis
this
3
trial.
crazies. Southern Lady, I've never seen
Now,
anything
by
like
now,
it, and I've
you've
done a ton.
each found your parking place out there inside the fence, I would assume.
I've been on the social
And since
medias
you now
looking
know
at true
where that
crime
is,
if I've
it'll be
ever.
easier each succeeding day for you to find where to park. If any of you need work slips for your employer for employment purposes, see one of the employees of the court or the clerk, and we'll make sure you get a work
Please
slip.
eject the
There may,
cougher.
from time to time,
Yes, it was the
be bench
special
conferences
prosecutor. Now they
whispering
need
at the
to
bench.
eject
You
that
are
cougher.
totally
We
to
don't need any
ignore
more of
that.
this.
It's not that those conferences are not meant for the jury. You know where our restrooms are by now. We've had a few days here in the courtroom, so you know where they are, and they are what they are. But and hopefully we'll have no problems that way. We'll try to accommodate anybody.
I've never been invited to one
who needs
either
a
because
restroom trip.
I probably wouldn't
You've
act
got
right.
juror badges. I see that you're all wearing your badges. We'll be sending those home with you. That's a little different than we normally
No,
do. But
so
since we have
let me just
specific
turn this
parking
down a little
places
bit
for
real
you,
quick.
those identify you as jurors.
So
Try to remember
West
that
Memphis is
today
is not technically, it is in Arkansas, okay? But it's right there at the Arkansas Tennessee border, which is why they call it West Memphis. It's why the city is named that, West Memphis, because it's just over the line. It's west of Memphis.
If you have any problems at all, tell one of the people serving as bailiff for the court. We'll try to take care of these problems.
No, I don't know who he is.
Does council wish me to give any other advice at this time?
We really are the best chat ever on these YouTube streets.
We begin every trial.
Oops,
ladies and gentlemen,
ouch.
with opening statements. You will see throughout the course of this trial.
Yes,
that
that's,
frequently the
but
state
that's
providers
what
will
it is,
argue
babe.
first and then the defendant to go second. That's true of opening
And yes,
statements.
Southern Lady's correct.
Again, the order in which we proceed at trial is a matter of longstanding procedure, and we're required to follow it in this trial. Opening statements are not evidence and may not in themselves be weighed as evidence. They may, however, be very useful to you as jurors in understanding the evidence as it's presented. Now, the prosecuting attorney, if prepared to go forward at this time, may begin your opening statement.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to start this with an apology because I think we owe you an apology, and also, again, gratitude for your patience throughout this process. We've tried to warn you that it's going to be a long process.
I'm coming in, so just leave it open.
Regardless of those warnings. But starting back in July, when you showed up at the gymnasium and filled out, 20-page questionnaire, and then showed up for individual questioning, and then again for general questioning, and then literally weathered jury review.
Oh, thank you, Bubs.
Kind of hot on that bus, I think. And then the delay. We sincerely apologize for the delay that happened. None of us wanted that to happen. Obviously, we have 6 alternate jurors in case something happens to one of you original 12, but we don't have that ability if something happens to the participants. So again, I apologize for that. We all would have liked to have started this last week, especially when the jury view was still fresh in your mind. Especially, it would be nice to be sitting here saying we have 1 week under our belts of a 6 to 8 week trial, right? But again, our apologies for that and our gratitude for you to continue persevering. Also, thanking you in advance for the amount of patience that you're going to have to show over the next 6 to 8 weeks. We will be trying to streamline this as much as possible. So, we will try not to call 12 witnesses if we can do it with 2 or whatever the case may be. One of the things that you might see us doing is calling a witness more than once. And we're doing that
yes.
in a chronological
I know who you're
fashion,
talking
so that it
about
makes
now.
sense. So,
Okay.
for instance, our
Wow.
ballistics expert, for instance, did some work at the beginning of the case.
I have it up as much as it can go, babe.
Some in the middle, right?
Yeah,
But
it won't go
when we
higher.
get to
Now,
the tail
hello.
end of things, when you guys haven't even been introduced.
That's why I have the
Okay, so
whatchamacallit
in
on.
that fashion, you might see us doing that.
Yes, yes, they did.
So we won't be able to offer you that explanation then, so I'm offering it to you now. Additionally, what's I going to say? Oh, we might have to call jurors or witnesses out of order. I just got done saying we're going to try to present it to you in a streamlined fashion so that it makes sense chronologically. But due to schedules and stuff like that, we can't always do that. So we apologize if we do end up having to call somebody out of order. Okay, let's talk about why we are here. We are here, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, because this defendant, George Wagner IV, aka George Wagner, and his brother, Edward Jacob Wagner, and his father, George Wagner III, also known as Billy Wagner. The 3 of them, in the late hours of April 21st of 2016 into the early morning hours of April 22nd of 2016, went up to Union Hill Road to 3 different locations that you all saw, and 1 location out on Left Fork Road, and murdered 8 people who did not deserve to die. I want that to sink in. They killed people who did nothing to justify the death sentence that they received at the hands of the defendant and his brother and his father. And in part, you will learn his mother, who helped in the planning and plotting of this. This was not a crime of passion. This was not in a fit of rage. This was not in self-defense. These murders happened after a period of 3 months of planning and plotting and purchasing and preparing and executing 8 individuals of a family. The question that has been asked the most over the past 6.5 years is why? Why did 4 individuals plot to kill 8 members of another family? And I think you will be disappointed to learn that there is no good reason. Now, I say that. There's rarely ever a good reason to kill somebody. But you, at some point in the middle of this trial, or certainly by the end of this trial, it will dawn on you that these murders should have never happened. It was the result of a series of misguided decisions by the defendant and his family. You will learn that some of the people they intended to kill, other people were killed simply because they were there. And you will learn that the defendants knew that before they walked out of the door that night to kill these individuals, that there might be other people there. And they all agreed those people would have to be killed too, regardless of the fact that they literally had no issue with any of those other individuals. They decided that those people would have to die too. And it could have been much worse. You will learn that little Chris, one of the victims in this case, 16-year-old Christopher Rhoden, often had friends spend the night. It was highly unusual that he didn't. Fortunately for his friends, he was grounded because he came home late the night before, and his parents took away his car, and he wasn't allowed to have his friend over. But if there had been a friend laying on the couch, as he would have been, you will learn without a doubt that they would have killed him too. Corey Holdren, who was the boyfriend of Hannah Mae Rhoden, also could very well have been there. And if he had been there, you will learn they absolutely would have killed him too. Again, people they had no issue with, they were willing to kill indiscriminately with no reason. I'd like to start by introducing you to the 8 people who were killed and telling you a little bit about them and why they were. Okay, these are the 8 individuals who were killed, like I said, late night, April 21st. Can you not see?
I'm sorry.
The jury is asking if they can take notes during openings.
Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. I meant to ask Terry, would you get the jurors' notepads now?
Oh, go ahead.
Judge, can we approach just for a moment?
Yeah.
So, Kez, the theory for the motive, which why is it not doing what I ask? Okay. The theory for the motive is the custody of the daughter that Hannah Rhoden and Jake Wagner shared. And Jake wanted full custody, and Hannah's was like, no. And that's why all this happened. So sad. So sad. And they must have been absolutely terrified. I can't imagine.
All right, you each have your notepads now, and thank you for reminding me of that. And you may certainly take notes during opening statements. Again, I just remind you that the opening statements of each attorney are not in and of themselves evidence, but are designed to help you understand the evidence as it's presented. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. and I've been asked not to stray too far from the microphone. Again, our court reporter has trouble hearing if we do, so I'm going to try to anchor myself here a little bit.
So does the audience.
Okay, so Christopher Rhoden Sr. and Gary Rhoden, Frankie Rhoden, Hannah Hazel Gilley, Dana Rhoden, Hannah Mae Rhoden, Chris Rhoden Jr., and Kenneth Rhoden. Chris Rhoden Sr. is 40 years old, was 40 years old at the time of his death. He lived at 4077 Union Hill Road, which was that very first address that we got out on the jury view. The very first one we went to. There was a shed there. There was a big, huge gray building. So hopefully you guys remember this from, but he was married to Dana Rhoden in 1994, and they divorced 13 years later, but for all practical purposes, they lived as husband and wife. They did not live together, but for instance, he purchased the trailer that she lived in at 3199 Union Hill Road about a month before the homicide. So he worked at Big Bear Lake every day. He operated heavy equipment and did construction, built decks and stuff like that. And alongside of Gary and Shannon Miller. People would describe Chris Sr. as a generous person. He would help family members. One of those examples is Bobby Jo Manley, whom you will hear from. She lived on his property for $150 a month, and in exchange, she would feed his animals every week, on every other day basis or frequently throughout the week. Another individual was buying a car from him that he never would have been able to afford, but again, Chris let him work that off by mowing the lawn or helping with feeding the animals, of which they had many.
Yes, Kez Chick, it is.
You see here that on April 21st of 2016, his last outgoing text was to Dana Rhoden, his former wife. That was at 10:53 p.m. And you can see that his last outgoing contact was to Billy Wagner at 10:55 p.m. And that time will become very important to you when you learn its significance.
But we're going to go more into
Gary
that
Rhoden was 38 years old
because
at
it's
the
a little
time
complicated.
He was killed. He lived with Christopher Rhoden on occasion. He was from Kentucky, but he would come and stay with his cousin, and in so doing, he would work at Big Bear Lake and help make a living. So he worked alongside Christopher Rhoden Sr., and he was last seen at 8:30 p.m. by another individual there at both at his residence and down at 3122 Union Hill Road. Dana Rhoden was 37 years old at the time she was killed. She's the daughter of Leonard and Judy, and she is one of 4 siblings. James Manley is her brother, Bobby Jo is her sister, and Kathy Clay is another sister. She married Chris Rhoden. We already talked about this. They had 3 children together, Frankie Rhoden, Hannah Mae Rhoden, and Christopher Rhoden Jr., or Little Chris, as most people called him. She worked at Hillside Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. She pulled a double shift on April 21st of 2016. She started around 8 o'clock in the morning, and she worked until a little bit after 11 p.m. And she was last seen on video surveillance at the People's One Stop, and she was seen having a conversation with her friend and coworker, Angela Pease, around from 11:15 to 11:30 p.m. And the last outgoing contact was a series of text messages to her former husband that were unanswered. And she definitely relished in her role as grandmother. Even Angela Wagner would say that the grandchildren adored her. She would have cookouts and do other fun things for them when she had them. Frankie Rhoden was 20 years old. He had just started a new job doing construction. This was in keeping with what he had gone to vocational school for 3 years. His teacher there knew that Frankie considered him a mentor. He was in constant contact with him, even though he had already graduated. And the teacher knew that Frankie had just started this job. Again, that was in keeping with the skills that he learned at school. He had 2 children, 2 sons. One was Clarence Brentley, is what he went by. He was 3 years old at the time his father was killed. And he also had a 6-month-old son named Ruger, who was actually laying in the bed with Frankie and Hannah Hazel when both of them were killed. He spent the day working with Cody Manley. He is seen by himself on surveillance camera purchasing groceries at Rhoden One Stop. His last outgoing contact was a phone call to Chelsea Robinson. Chelsea is the mother of Brentley. She had called him that evening and asked if he would be able to watch Brentley because the kids at the daycare were sick and she had to work. They had a very good relationship, and he consented to having Brentley come over, and that's why Brentley was there that night. The last activity we see on his phone is just before 11 p.m. He takes a picture of both of his children sleeping. He was dating Hannah Hazel Gilley, the mother of Ruger, and intended to marry her. They were living together at the time they were killed. Hannah Gilley was also 20 years old when she was killed. She is the daughter of Andrea Carter and Ray Gilley, engaged to Frankie Rhoden, had a son. One son, who was her first child, 6-month-old. She was nursing him. She was not working at the time. She was simply providing care to their child. And she had been at that residence since the day before. And her last outgoing contact was to her sister at just before 1 a.m. Hannah Mae Rhoden, had just turned 19 a few weeks prior to her death. She resided at 3122 Union Hill Road. I guess I should back up. Frankie and Hazel lived at 4099, no, doing that wrong, 4199 Union Hill Road. If you recall, we had you walk from one location to the other, and you kind of went through it was mowed grass, but then stuff on the side, and you were asked to kind of look around as you traveled that direction. Because Frankie and Hazel lived, it's approximately a half a mile from the front doorstep of Chris Sr. To that second place where there was only a porch left, but that's where Frankie and Hazel lived.
I wish that she would be just a little bit more
Dana and Hannah Mae
passionate talking about the victims. Just a little bit.
3122 Union Hill Road. And they had just moved there approximately a month prior to that, a little less than a month prior to that. So, and living there as well was Kylie Rhoden, which is the daughter that Hannah Mae had given birth to 5 days before she was killed. Her daughter, Sophia Wagner, who was almost 3 years old, not quite, she was 2.5 years old. I know it says 3 years old up there. But she also lived there when she was not with her father, Jake Wagner. So Jake Wagner was the father of Sophia Wagner. Her last outgoing contact was a text to Corey Holdren. Corey Holdren was supposed to spend the night that night with her, but his sister's water pipes burst, and so he had to leave to help his sister.
Can you imagine the people that were supposed to spend the night but didn't?
And lastly, Chris Rhoden Jr. also lived there at that residence with his mother and his sister. Again, he had just been grounded because he had been out late. He was dating a girl at the time of the homicides. He was a freshman in high school. He had just got his driver's license a few months prior. And his last outgoing contact was a Snapchat just before midnight to Brandy Taylor. There he is getting his license. I'd like
Aw.
to go back.
It's such a monumental event in a teenager's life to get their driver's license. You know, he had just gotten it.
So
Poor kid.
you will learn that Chris Rhoden Sr. was one of the intended targets of the Wagners. And you will learn that's because he was the patriarch of the family, and they considered basically that if they kind of got rid of him, that the structure of the family would fall. And they also knew that if they only killed Hannah Mae, who was really their true target, right, that he would know who did it, and that would either get them arrested or he would retaliate and try to kill one of them. That's the reason he was killed. Gary Rhoden was killed simply because he was there. Now, they knew that he often stayed there and likely knew that he was going to be there that night. And again, were perfectly comfortable with killing him regardless. Frankie Rhoden knew that his sister had complained about the violence that Jake had exhibited upon her. He found this out, Jake Wagner found that out when he was speaking with Dana Rhoden the week of the homicides. And Dana had shared that with him. And that, again, he would know that it was the Wagners that killed them. Hannah Hazel Gilley, again, she was collateral damage the Wagners were willing to take on to get to the other people that they wanted to kill. Dana Rhoden, again, her crime, she was allegedly not even one of the targets. She was allegedly collateral damage, but I think you will learn that she almost had to be a intended target, because you will learn that they waited for her to return to the residence after she got off of work. But again, she knew some of the things that Jake had said to Hannah Mae. She knew that he had said to her that if she left with Sophia, tried to leave with Sophia, that he would kill her and bury her body where her family couldn't find it. And so Dana confronted Jake Wagner with that information when he came to the residence the week of the homicides. Hannah Mae Rhoden, her crime was not returning the love of Jake Wagner, not submitting to the control of the Wagners. And you will learn that that is the character of this family, was very controlling of any women who came into their circle. So any women who dated, had children with George Wagner, any women who dated or had children with Jacob Wagner. And we have 3 prime examples of this. But for Hannah Mae's purpose, she was a little bit stronger than the others, and that is why she ended up being killed. Chris Rhoden Jr. Was an intended target, again, because he lived in the same residence, would know who did this, and that would cause an arrest or retaliation. Kenneth Rhoden was kind of an add-on. He was the one who lived out on Left Fork, where we drove down, and there was like construction down there on Left Fork. We drove past it at one point, and then we allowed you to stop and get out and walk up into that area. Kenneth Rhoden and Chris Rhoden Sr. were very close to each other. Kenneth Rhoden worked in Columbus, Ohio, at U.S. Utilities Company. And he had no running water at his residence, so he would get up at 4:30 in the morning and drive over to Chris Sr.'s and take a shower and then go on to work. And there had been prior occasions where Chris Rhoden had been hurt and Kenneth retaliated on his behalf. So the Wagners very much knew that about Kenneth, and so they decided that he had to be killed because, again, he would know who it was, and he also knew that the Wagners were going to be there that night. So he knew they had to kill him.
See, this is the part where she
Okay,
needs to be just
so
a
let's
little more
talk about
passionate, in
how
my
is it
opinion.
that four
But they
individuals
probably feel like they
plot
got it
and
laid out
plan and
pretty
conspire
clearly. So
and
we'll see.
prepare and execute 8 individuals. And you will learn that they were killed, most of them were killed while they were sleeping or in their beds, with the exception of Chris Sr. and Gary Rhoden, who were awake. It kind of starts with a love story, if you want to call that. A very young teenage girl, Hannah Mae Rhoden, age 13 at the time, was at the Pike County Fairgrounds. She participated in 4-H, and she had bunnies, and somebody introduced her to Jacob, who was almost 18 at that time, and she kept asking him to look at her bunnies or pet her bunnies. Jake will tell you that he was annoyed initially, but then on a second chance meeting, they started dating, if you can date at age 13. That was in August of 2010. Reportedly, Jake gets permission from Chris Rhoden Sr. to date his daughter, his very young daughter. Chris Rhoden agrees, but he always sends along a chaperone, either Frankie or little Chris, go with Hannah Mae whenever she's hanging out with Jake Rhoden. And you will learn as well that Chris Rhoden Sr. also knew Billy Wagner. They were in fact friends. And so because of that, he gave his permission for her to be dating Jake. A few years later, Jake asked Chris Rhoden Sr.'s permission to propose to his daughter. Chris Rhoden permitted the proposal, but informed Jake that he would not permit his daughter to marry anybody until she was 18 years of age. So they had an engagement where they tattooed wedding rings on themselves. And then you will learn that Hannah Mae got pregnant when she was 15 years of age. And at that time, Jake was 20 years of age. It was during the pregnancy that we see the first signs of trouble. There are text messages from Jake to Hannah Mae, which state that she has to make a decision whether to be with him or not, whether to live with him or not, that Sophia, they had already named their child, was going to live with him no matter what. So if she wanted to be with Sophia, she would have to come and stay with him. And he says, quote, "I'll take Sophie."
Zoinks
and if I
indeed,
have to,
Amelia.
by force." This is when Sophia was still inside of Hannah Mae's womb. She gave birth to Sophia in November of 2013. She did stay with the Wagners periodically up on Bethel Hill Road. If you recall, we went up to Bethel Hill Road during the jury view. That was the hill that we literally went up. That was, I think, day 2 of our jury view. We went up the hill. Once you got up there, there was a trailer. That trailer was not there previously. That's now a hunting cabin.
Yeah,
we
I
asked
caught
you
that
to
too,
look,
Southern Lady. And the other
first
thing that I caught was if you can even
to the
date
left of
at
that
13,
trailer,
which
out
the
in distance,
intention, I
there was some
believe,
structures there.
was
That was the
to
home,
have a
that they
dig
lived in at the time.
at Jake
Um,
and
as
the
a
Wagner
side
family,
note, on the
but
way
it
down
actually
from
is
Bethel Hill, we had you look
a
off
dig
to
at both
the right.
families,
We
to be
stayed on the bus,
fair.
and we had you
Probably
look
should have
generally in
she
a
probably should have worded
location.
that a little
That
different.
was the location of the first residence of the Wagners, which you will learn burned down.
Good night, Kes Chick.
Ultimately,
Thanks for being here,
they
babe. You
moved-
have
the
sweet
Wagners
dreams if
moved
you fall
to
asleep
Peterson Road, 260
while you're
Peterson Road.
listening.
That was the location. It was a red house. It had a pool, a standing pool outside. It had 2 barns we had to go through. We had to look at a well. We had to look at a cistern inside one of the barns, if you recall that. That pool was not there when the Wagners lived there. That's something that the new owners have improved on the property. Likewise, there was, I think, a deck on the cabin right by the pool that they had put on. So there were some things that were different, but for the most part, structurally, it was the same. So Hannah Mae lived with Jake and George and Angela at 260 Peterson Road. You will learn that when they were on Bethel Hill, Billy lived with them. But once they moved to Peterson Road, it was only Jake and George and Angela Wagner. And Tabitha Wagner, who was George's spouse, they got married in 2012. And she lived there as well as Hannah Mae would stay there sometimes. Sometimes she would go home to her family. Eventually, Hannah Mae leaves Jake in early 2015. She calls her father, asks for him to come get her. Jake had choked her, and she just could not handle the controlling nature of not just Jake, but also the family. You will learn that.
Oh, wow.
She
I
found
didn't know that,
difficulty
Southern
because
lady.
Angela Wagner, or Jake wanted Angela Wagner to really parent Sophia Wagner. And she said it was awkward because they would want her, Sophia, to call Angela mom, even when
Right.
Hannah Mae was sitting right there. So again, just this kind of controlling, there was fat shaming, trying to keep her from her family. And you will see that they also did these sorts of things to Tabitha Wagner and later to the wife of Jake Wagner.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Are they going to get Tabitha up there? I was
Once
thinking about that.
Hannah
I'm
Mae
like,
left Jake, she started dating somebody named Charlie Gilley, who was the brother
oh,
of Hannah Hazel Gilley. You will learn that she did not date him for long because he had a drug habit, and she was not tolerant of that. And so she stopped dating him. She started dating another individual named Corey Holdren. After she started dating Corey Holdren, she learned that she was pregnant. And she knew that the child belonged to Charlie Gilley, just based on the timing and everything.
I think Jake did
She
nonstop
let Corey
mom.
Holdren know that.
Statutory, though. Not.
You will hear from him that he elected to stay with her because they had a very loving and supportive relationship. In fact, he will tell you that he had an addiction to pills that Hannah Mae helped him get over. She insisted that he not use drugs if they were going to remain together, and she stayed with him during the period of time that he was withdrawing.
Most states have a Romeo and Juliet law.
At this point,
but I think 13 and 15.
Jake is continuously trying to
and
get
18,
Hannah Mae
excuse
to
me.
come back
13
to him.
and 18 are not. That doesn't
Threatening
qualify.
to keep Sophia from her, and goes to see an attorney for custody. And you will learn that Hannah Mae goes to that attorney, even though it's Jake's attorney, and she knows that, and meets with them. But you will learn from that attorney that Hannah Mae was not interested in signing any custody paperwork. She wanted things to just remain status quo. She would ask for changes, they would make it, but she still would refuse to sign the papers. And ultimately, when they learned that she was pregnant, they decided to put that to the side. And again, that was in late 2015. So at this point, I'm going to bring in Tabitha Wagner, which is George Wagner's former wife, because she plays an important role in this story. She was living with the Wagners at the same time that Hannah Mae was. And you will learn that they engaged in the same cycle with Tabitha. She was not allowed to have contact with her family. She will tell you she had over a year where she had no contact with her family. And that was because the Wagners did not think her family were good people. There had been.
Thank you, Madam Prosecutor,
some
for
abuse
answering
in the
my question.
past,
I
and they didn't
appreciate
want,
that. Tabitha, don't
her
testify.
even associating with her family. She will tell you that she was allowed to call her mother one time on her birthday, but
I'm still
they
going to
would
be here,
stand
but I'm
there
just
while
going to
she was
mute. I'll
making
be
that phone call.
right
Um,
back.
They would accuse her of poisoning them with
Yes,
food. The
for
Wagners would
forgery.
accuse
That's what they
Tabitha of
charged
doing
her
that.
with.
They were accused
And
her
I think
of
they
being
later dropped a
abusive
couple of
of,
charges.
Bullvine, which was the child that she and George Wagner had. And again,
Okay, I'm going on mute.
were very critical of her, criticized her on how she parented, and heralded Angela as the role model to emulate. And again, Angela was basically parenting Bullvine instead of allowing Tabitha to do that. You will learn that on one occasion, George and Tabitha got into an argument and over Bullvine, and Tabitha said that she was going to take Bullvine and leave with him. Angela took Bullvine from her and made the comment that she was going to go get her gun. Angela said that. Tabitha fled from the residence. You will learn that Angela threw a 2x4 at her as she was exiting the residence. And Tabitha hid on the property until it was dark. And then she took a bicycle and she bicycled down to the gas station, the nearest gas station, which was at least a mile away. Simultaneously, the Wagners go out looking for her. And when they see her arrive at the gas station, they are worried that she's going to call the police and say that they threatened her and they, threw a 2x4 at her, etc. She was just calling her mom for help when that's what she did. She called her mom. But the Wagners, anticipating that she might be calling for law enforcement, the comment was made that whoever calls first is the one who gets the charges. You better call first, George, and report domestic violence against her, so that counteracts that. So that's what they did. And since there was 3 of them against one of Tabitha, a complaint was filed against Tabitha, even though she had not done anything to them. Then you will find out that there was a custody here. There was a dissolution of their marriage and custody hearing on Bullvine. And she was not represented. Tabitha was unrepresented. George had an attorney, and she entered into one of the historically worst custody agreements anyone's ever seen. Specifically, she had no rights to him. George had full custody, and she was permitted to see him only when the Wagner said so, and only supervised when they said so. So no set schedule for her to see this child, and only if and when the Wagner said so. She will tell you that they convinced her that this was just a temporary thing, that until she was able to get her own place and be on her own 2 feet, that this was just a temporary thing. However, when she got on our own 2 feet and tried to get increase in visitation, they did not permit it. So she had to get an attorney. Again, this was in 2015, which becomes a very important time period. I know I'm kind of bouncing around here, but this takes us back to Hannah Mae when she was talking to Tabitha's mother. Okay, Tabitha's mother is named Tess, Patricia, but she goes by Tess. She is having a private Facebook conversation. So, the messenger, and I don't know how many of you know Facebook, but, you can post stuff on your Facebook and everybody can read it, or you can instant message somebody, message them privately and nobody else can see that conversation except you and the person you're conversing with, right? But they are talking about the Wagners and the custody issues that Jake and Hannah Mae are having. And Tess, Tabitha's mother, says to Hannah Mae, just make sure you don't let them make you sign papers like they did to Tabitha, right? To which Hannah Mae responds, I won't sign papers ever. They'll have to kill me first. Okay? Again, that's a private message between Hannah Mae and Tabitha's mother. That conversation happened on December 9th of 2015. She had left Jake early in 2015. That conversation happens December 9th of 2015, after they had already kind of exhausted the whole attorney thing. Just over 4 months later, Hannah Mae and 7 members of her family are dead. So let's go back to April 21st and April 22nd when these homicides occurred, and how we ended up here today in the courtroom with this defendant. You will learn that Bobby Jo Manley, I mentioned her earlier, she's the sister of Dana Rhoden. She was there coming to the property of Chris Rhoden Sr. to feed the animals that he had. He had numerous dogs. They had chickens, they had pigs, they had inside dogs, outside dogs. So she was there to do this, and she typically would get her daughter on the bus at 7 a.m. and arrive at Chris Sr.'s house around 7:30 a.m. when she went. She didn't go every day. She sometimes went with an individual named Billy Morgan. Billy Morgan and Emma Morgan were a married couple that lived with Billy Jo Manley at that time. Or Bobby Jo Manley, sorry. And sometimes Billy Morgan would go with Bobby Jo, and again, he would help her feed the animals, or he would mow the lawns and stuff. And they would keep track of their hours. There was a log inside Chris Sr.'s house where they would write down, Bobby Jo or Billy, and just that they were there. And then they got $20 a day to do these chores for Chris Sr. You will learn that typically Chris Sr. is not there when they arrive, because he gets up early and he's already on his way to Big Bear Lake where he works. So he's typically not there when they get there. Additionally, there are 2 dogs that are inside dogs, and they can only be let out one at a time. Otherwise, they fight and or run away. So anytime they let one of those inside dogs out, it's just one at a time. Well, Bobby Jo will tell you that on this particular morning, she and Billy and Emma Morgan drove up to that location. Emma Morgan doesn't normally go with them, but they were going to go into town after the chores were done at Chris Sr.'s house. So she was just kind of tagging along for the ride. When they got there, you will learn that they immediately thought something was amiss because Chris Sr.'s truck was still at the house. And both of the inside dogs were sitting outside of the house on the front porch. Billy went to go start feeding the animals. Bobby Jo goes up to the house to see what's going on with Chris, why the dogs are out, all that stuff. The door is locked. That's also unusual. The door is not usually locked. She knows where the key is, though. She can't reach it. It's in a gutter above the front door. She calls Billy over to help her because he's taller, and they retrieve the key and they enter the residence. They obviously were not prepared for what they saw when they entered that residence. Furniture was askew. You'll hear there was vice grips on the floor that normally are in Chris Sr.'s pocket. And there was blood, lots and lots of blood. And drag marks leading from the living room through the kitchen and down the hall and back to the bedroom, where they surmised somebody who was bleeding had been drugged. They walk back to the bedroom, which is Chris Sr.'s bedroom, and there they find both Chris Sr. and Gary Rhoden laying on the floor. Bobby Joe could not tell what kind of injuries they had. She could not tell that they were shot. She thought that they had been beaten to death just because of so much blood, and they were partially covered with a comforter. She tried to rouse them by
I
shouting
can't
at
imagine
them.
walking in on that.
Billy
and
was
seeing
behind
that.
her. They quickly exited, and she went to the car where Emma Morgan, they call her Emmy, was still seated, and she retrieved her telephone and made a phone call to 911. And you will be able to hear that 911 call. She's out of breath. She's clearly frantic, clearly upset. Everyone who came into contact with her after that point will describe her as that. After she calls 911, she will tell you, it sticks vividly in her head that she couldn't remember the address of Chris Sr. So she had to walk out to the mailbox to get the address for the dispatcher. She gets that address and gives it to the dispatcher. And in the meantime, she decides she's going to walk to Frankie's house to get his help and let him know what's happened to his father and to Gary. So she walks basically that same path that we walked on our jury view. And she gets to Frankie's house, and she's knocking on the door and yelling for Frankie, and she's not getting an answer. She hears Brentley, the 3-year-old, answer from behind the door. And she says, "Hey, B," is what she called him. "It's Aunt JoJo. Can you open the door?" He opens the door for her. There's a chain lock that she recalls having to help get open. And she enters the residence and asks Brentley where his father is. And Brentley points down the hallway and says, "Daddy has a lot of blood." She goes down to the bedroom, which is to the right when you enter the residence, and she finds both Frankie and Hannah Hazel laying in bed, clearly dead. Hannah Hazel apparently had been nursing Ruger at the time of her death because of the way the clothing was situated, and Ruger was still laying between them, covered in his parents' blood. Bobby Joe takes Ruger out of the bed. She says she couldn't help it. She didn't want him laying in their blood any longer. She gets both Ruger
It is bad.
and
Southern lady.
Brentley,
It's
and she
awful.
exits the residence. You will also learn that while she was walking to Frankie's house, Billy Morgan had gotten in the vehicle that they had arrived in and gone to get Dana Rhoden and Leonard and Judy Manley, who are the parents of Dana Rhoden and the parents of Bobby Joe Manley. Billy stopped at Dana's house, yelled for Dana, didn't get an answer, noticed the door was ajar, but decided to go on to Leonard and Judy's and get their help, get there and let them know what had happened to everybody. Leonard and Judy follow Billy Morgan back up to Frankie's house, and they also enter that residence, and along with James Manley. James Manley, again, is the brother of Dana Rhoden and the brother of Dana Rhoden and Bobby Joe Manley. He had not heard what had happened, but he saw Billy Morgan come to his parents' house.
I
seemingly
can't.
frantic, and his parents then rushing out.
Southern lady.
afterwards and
It's the
following Billy
Okay.
Morgan, and so
What
he decided to
occurred
get in his
is
truck and
bad
follow and see
enough
what was wrong as well.
itself,
When he saw
but
what had
seeing
happened to Frankie and Hazel,
children,
and Bobby Joe, also
especially
told him then
the
what had
3-year-old
happened
who
to
answered the
Senior
door,
and Gary Rhoden,
and then seeing the
James
baby
decided to go down and
in the
tell
bed.
his sister what has happened to her son and her former husband. When he gets there, he also notices that the
I mean,
door
just
is
going
ajar.
from house to house,
He
finding
enters the residence. He knew that his sister had worked a double shift.
the
They lived
total
very
and
close to
complete
one another. The
obliteration of an
Manleys,
entire
Leonard
family.
and Judy Manley lived very close to where Dana
I can't
Rhoden
imagine it.
lived with Hannah Mae and Christopher. And he thought that maybe she was just sleeping, that she was, just really tired because she had worked a double shift and had worked late. He went back to her bedroom. She was covered up, so he didn't know if she was in the bed. He felt around in the bed until he could feel that her body was there. And he lifted the pillow that was covering her face and said that he could tell it was sticking to her face. And so he let it drop back down, knew that she was dead, and exited the residence. He will tell you that he heard Kylie, the 5-day-old baby, crying, but he could not bring himself to go back and see anything more. He went out, got into his truck, went and got his wife, April Manley, to tell her everything that he had seen and learned. And she came back with him to Dana's residence. And this was the residence, this was the last residence we visited on the first day. It had a red garage still standing. It kind of had, you could tell there was a cellar because this residence had an addition built onto it, and there was actually a cellar down there. It was right before we went on lunch break, the first day. April and James were there then.
This
at
is
that
just
residence.
awful.
And in the meantime, law enforcement is finally responding, right? I should have mentioned that when Bobby Joe and them came out of the residence at Frankie's, the first deputy arrived on scene, Deputy Chandler. And several others followed him, and they were interested in getting anybody out of the scenes, roping off the scenes, protecting the scenes. Likewise, there were law enforcement coming up past Dana's up to Chris and Frankie's, as opposed to the first people to arrive came this way. They were going to Chris Sr.'s, but they had to pass by Frankie's, and that's when they saw all of these individuals collected outside of Frankie's residence.
Just the sheer,
James
it's sad
Manley
and
April Manley
the
fled
chaos
down,
of
the
it all.
first
You
law
know what I
enforcement
mean?
People that they saw passing the house, those law enforcement again on their way to Chris Sr.'s house, not knowing that there was more individuals who had been killed at that location. And they told them what was going on, that they had gone in and they believed Dana Rhoden to be dead, that they heard the baby crying, but they had not checked on any of the other individuals, that there should at
The
least
only
be
thing that I can
DNA
think of as far as
little
why they
Chris
would be
in that
putting,
residence.
giving Jake and
Officers
Angela
started
a
to
plea
try
deal
to clear the residence because nobody at this time
is
knows
because
if
they
there's an
must
active
need their
threat,
testimony.
present in any of these
Otherwise, I
residences.
can't see why they would do
So
it.
they're trying to clear it. Another deputy comes in and is focused on retrieving the baby, goes back to Hannah Mae's bedroom and gets Kylie and goes out of the residence with Kylie in his arms. Gives Kylie to an EMT, who then takes Kylie to an ambulance, and April Manley was permitted to be with Kylie while they were dealing with the scene. You will learn that the first room that they cleared when they were clearing the residence was little Chris's room. Again, that was off to the right, and you will see pictures of this, but when you enter the residence, his bedroom was off to the right. There was a living room that you're standing in when you enter the front door. There's a kitchen, and then there's Dana's bedroom, a hallway, and Hannah Mae's bedroom was back in the addition. So he was separated, by a living room and a kitchen from his mother and sister. They found little Chris in bed, shot and dead. And then they work their way back to Hannah Mae's bedroom and see that she also is shot and dead. And then they go to Dana's bedroom and confirm that she also has been shot and is dead. They clear the scene, and then you'll learn that, as with all these scenes, they rope it off.
Yeah,
and
it did.
prevent
This was,
anybody else from going in until
This
BCI
was
can arrive and
Ohio's
process the scene
largest and
right?
most expensive
So,
investigation
you will learn that
of ever.
Then Sheriff Reeder showed up.
Like, let that
around
sink in.
9:30. The phone call to 911 was just before 8 a.m. And you will learn that when he arrived,
I
he
can't
kind of
imagine
did
what
got a briefing of what was
George's
going on, kind of gathered facts and
defense's
information.
opening statements are going to be.
Made sure
I
the
was
scenes
there,
were
but I didn't
secure,
shoot.
asked EMT.
I
there
just-
was a number of ambulance that had arrived by that time. He asked them to stage at a location that was between Chris Sr.'s house and Dana Rhoden's house. And he made a decision to call BCI to come and process the scenes, and then later to handle the investigation. BCI often helps process scenes for communities that don't have their own crime scene units, but especially in a case of this magnitude, Sheriff Reeder was going to do that. He also called the coroner and did his administrative stuff, right? Made sure that everybody was organized. He called other sheriff's deputies that ultimately came to help secure the scenes, do roadblocks so that people couldn't come in and out of the scenes, etc. The family of these people that were killed.
Sounds like it,
of course,
Southern
the
lady.
family and everybody's being notified. They called Chelsea to come and get Brentley. She came and got Brentley. Kylie and Ruger were both transported to Adams County Regional Hospital just to be checked. And
Unless
the family members of these
they
individuals
present
that were
evidence
also
later
started
that he was
arriving
moved.
on scene, just to
Then it
get
could still be
some
true.
information or confirmation, or frankly to be told that this wasn't happening. The sheriffs made a decision to relocate all of the victims' family to a church on Union Hill Road. It's across 32 on the other side of Union Hill Road. And there they could, both the investigators could interact with the family and getting necessary information from them, and also the victims' families could receive information from law enforcement. You will also learn that during this time, family members had been calling Kenneth Rhoden, our last victim, out at Left Fork Road. But because he works in Columbus and they know his habit is to not really check his messages until lunch hour, he doesn't have his phone on his person. He goes out to his vehicle over lunch, and they expected that once the lunch hour came, he would check his messages and certainly return the many phone calls that he had received. However, he did not. And so some of the individuals that were at the church decided that they would go to Kenneth's house again to let him know what was happening. Where he's at Left Fork Road doesn't always have good cell phone service. Even he doesn't have good cell phone service out there. So they were hoping that that maybe was the explanation for why he was not receiving or returning phone calls. Donald Stone, Luke Rhoden, who is Kenneth's son, and Sean Watson, all three traveled out to that location. When they got there, again, called out for his dad. His dad didn't answer. Donald volunteered to go into the residence first, so Luke didn't have to. And they found Kenneth Rhoden also shot in bed where he had been laying sleeping. So they exited the residence and called 911, and local law enforcement responded to that. And again, same process of roping off the scenes and waiting for BCI to arrive. And BCI, we always assume people know our acronyms. That's the Bureau of Criminal Investigations. It's a part of the Attorney General's office. At the time, it was Mike DeWine. BCI arrived. You'll learn from Sheriff Evans that in his time there, again, he was interested in securing the residences. He also was responsible for getting the search warrants so that BCI could, in fact, search the residences of these 4 crime scenes. He would let you know that approximately 1:30 in the afternoon is when they finally got their search warrants typed, approved, and back out to the scenes and delivered to the BCI agents that were already there. waiting for the search warrant so they could begin processing the scenes. So, and
That's
you'll also
interesting.
learn,
I
guess
didn't
should add this
know.
now too,
Hey,
that,
Callie,
the
that they would need
coroners,
search
here,
warrants at a crime scene. That's
don't
interesting.
do the autopsies, but they do respond when there's any unnatural death. Just responsible for kind of a cursory review and in reaching a cursory cause of death. So the coroners that were responsible for this case was Dr. Kessler, who is the Pike County coroner, Dr. Farranet, who is a deputy coroner, and then an individual named Kenneth Dick from Adams County. He also helped. Again, kind of the call went out for.
And you're
as
right,
many
Callie.
people as
She needs
possible
this.
to help on this.
I think
And there was
I'll wait for their
actually a
break.
dispute as to
'Cause I don't want to
whether
talk
this was
over.
Adams County or Pike County, and you will learn that the sheriff of Adams County and the sheriff of Pike County met and discussed, and the sheriff of Adams County was very certain that this was in Pike County. Apparently there are maps actually that show it both ways, so that's still kind of in dispute, but just as an aside. Okay, so again, you will hear from each of the crime scene individuals crime scene agents who process the scene. There was usually one main one, and then usually another individual that would help that individual process the scene. They first start taking photographs of outside, and they work their way inside. They take pictures of everything as they find it before disturbing anything. And then they go back and start looking where there's evidence and putting down markers that mark that evidence and collecting, blood swabs or ballistics or anything that they find. So let's talk about what we found at the crime scenes. At crime scene 1, where Chris Sr. and Gary Rhoden were, they recovered one .40 caliber shell casing, and they also the following day recovered a fully jacketed ammo from underneath the floor, and that was a heavier weight .30 caliber ammo. And you will hear from Matt White that he believed that to be probably a 7.69 .32 ammo, but he didn't know for sure because there wasn't enough of it left to tell that. That was from scene 1. Additionally, in scene 1, there were shoe prints that were collected. You will learn that, because there was so much blood at that scene, there were shoe prints that were left there, and those were collected. They literally just cut up that part of the floor and submitted it to the lab for processing, where you will hear from the BCI expert who processes that stuff, that she was able to get 2 very good shoe prints for comparison. What they do from that point is they try to ascertain what shoe this is, right? So there's databanks that BCI has, databanks that FBI has, but she was not able to find that in any of the databanks that were present. So she went out herself to various shoe stores and places that sell shoes, and trying to find something that matched that shoe print, the tread and design. And she was actually able to find that shoe at Walmart. It was a men's shoe, Velcro, and she was able to tell that it was either a 10.5 or an 11. You will later learn that she was only focused on one shoe print. When she actually looked at both, she discovered that there was a 10.5 and an 11 size shoe print in that residence. So a 10.5 and a size 11 of the same shoe, same type of shoe, just different sizes in the same shoe. So she was able to glean that from scene 1. And I should note, I didn't tell you this before, but after everything was secured at the scenes, the Bobby Joe Manley, Billy Morgan, Emmy Morgan, and James Manley, all individuals who first discovered the deceased individuals, were taken to the sheriff's office and interviewed. That's traditional. If you're the first person that discovers something, you're going to be interviewed. They also took their shoes, or in James Manley's case, took pictures of the shoes because he did not want to part with his boots. So we know that the shoe does not belong to any of those individuals. Okay, so that was the reason for doing that, is because they very quickly realized that there was this shoe print evidence. You will hear from Matt White that the 40 caliber shell casing that was left at Chris Sr.'s residence, he believed it to belong to a Glock, and he believed it to be a third or fourth generation Glock. He also, there was a shell casing, 40 caliber, recovered from Kenneth Rhoden's address as well. Just, he was only shot one time, and the shell casing was still there, and those two matched. And when I say they matched, I don't mean they're just the same type of ammo. I mean, they were fired from the same gun. Okay, they can tell by the impressions that are made when the bullet is fired through the gun. So they were able to tell that Chris Rhoden Sr., Gary Rhoden, and Kenneth Rhoden were all shot by the same 40 caliber Glock. As to Frankie and Hannah Hazel and Dana and Hannah Mae and little Chris, they found 22 shell casings, 22 caliber shell casings, rimfire shell casings at both Frankie's laying in the bed. Especially when they removed the body, they were able to find all these shell casings. There were 5 at Frankie and Hannah Hazel's, and there was only one single shell casing found at the residence where Dana and Hannah and little Chris lived, and that was underneath the crib in the room where Hannah Mae slept. But they were able to match those.
Hey, Bessie
Those
Cakes,
also
good to
were-
see
so
you.
We learned that Frankie and
Oh,
Hannah
nonstop,
Hazel,
Mom.
Dana, Hannah
You need a
Mae,
note?
and little Chris were all killed with the same weapon. Now, Matt White was less sure about what type of 22 weapon that was, because he had never seen the markings. The markings were very unique. So he reached out to a lot of professional organizations trying to find out. Ultimately, Bowling Green's BCI lab ran across a gun that was a Colt 1911-22.
It's good to see you
long
too,
rifle
Bessie Cakes.
that made a very similar impression on the shell casing. So Matt White compared those, and he said, yes, this is the same type of weapon. So he became certain, not the identical weapon, not the weapon, but the same type of weapon, because he talked to people in Germany who confirmed for him that Colt made that weapon, and the firing pin made a very unique, that very unique marking on the shell casing. So he was convinced that we were looking for a 1911-22 long rifle. So they also determined, based on the ammo and the injuries to Chris Rhoden Sr., he was shot. Again, he and Gary were the only two who were fully dressed and awake when this happened.
Do you really,
You
Bethy?
could tell that he had been standing in front of
So
the doorway when
sad.
he was first shot. He had wood embedded in his face and his head, and they could tell it was a high-powered rifle, like an AR or an SKS, and that would fit with the ammo that they found as well. So we're kind of just narrowing down what guns we're looking for and that sort of thing. Through ballistic evidence, Matt White is our firearms expert at BCI, and we now know that there were 3 weapons involved in the killing of these 8 individuals. The autopsies also confirmed those findings. The coroner will tell you, and the coroner is Dr. Lohman from Hamilton County Coroner's Office. She will tell you that the injuries she saw were consistent on the 5 that we believe were killed with the 22 of a small.
Well, Bethy Cakes, we're all about to get caught up because she's going through every single step. So you're gonna know all the things by the time she's done.
Because it tore through his muscle and caused fractures of his arm. And the 40 caliber, the injuries were consistent with the 40 caliber being on Kenneth, Chris Sr. and Gary Rhoden. So basically, Chris Rhoden Sr. was shot with 2 different weapons.
And just so you guys know, I'm going to stream this morning until they take their lunch break.
They were also able to tell the angle.
Then I'll stream tonight. Okay. I'm going to do that for the entirety of the trial. You're going to have 6 to 8 weeks of 2 times the Gen Lu.
They do that based on the angles of the holes and stuff. And again, you'll hear from the crime scene agents.
Good luck.
Who were responsible for doing that. They could tell that it had been from outside of the residence.
Oh, Bethy, I was there briefly, and then I left again because I couldn't do it.
From where he was shot.
I was like, no, ma'am, I'm out.
And again, you'll get to see those angles. Another shoe print.
I said what I had to say, and then I pieced out.
With the identical shoe that our shoe print expert had found at Walmart. It was the size 11. They were able to ascertain that, and you will hear a very detailed explanation of that. It's actually quite intriguing if you've never really thought about the bottom of your shoe before. But
it's interesting that they used that they wore shoes from Walmart, which would be, as you can see, more difficult to track down than, say, a Nike or Adidas or
subtle differences, but you'll be able to see it with your own
a Vans.
That there's definite distinguishable differences. You will hear not only from Suzanne Elliott, who is the BCI expert in shoe print analysis, but also from an individual named William Bodziak, who is kind of considered the grandfather of shoe print evidence. He's been doing it for decades. He used to work for the FBI, has been referred to by the Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court, as one of the 2 world-renowned experts in the field of shoe print evidence. So,
I love expert testimony of that caliber.
Enough evidence that stuff got sent to him to analyze as well.
Because you always learn something.
And he confirms everything that Suzanne Elliott determined, which is that there was a size 10.5 and a size 11 of this particular shoe inside scene 1, and the size 11 of the same shoe inside scene 3.
Yeah, just don't go there.
Scene 3.
Nonstop, Mom. Just
Dana
don't do
Rhoden
it.
And Hannah Mae and Christopher Rhoden Sr. Sorry, we kind of number those just based on how they were discovered, right? Chris Sr.'s house was discovered first, Frankie's was second, Dana's was third, and then Kenneth's.
I can't.
First. So sometimes you'll hear individuals talking, their witnesses talking about it in that way. The other thing that people deduced from the processing the scenes and looking at the evidence was that there was likely a silencer.
Yes, chicken lady.
Used.
I promise.
Especially
I will cover it.
About with Frankie and Hannah and Dana and Hannah Mae. And
Well, I mean, look, I don't want to tell you your business, but
they did not wake up.
you know that Hen Lu has very low tolerance for BS and a high love of snacks.
So that would lead one to believe that probably a suppressor or silencer was used.
I have to say, while I don't support
again, this is just
a red
things
rum,
that we're deducing based
I
on
do
evidence and going forward in
understand
investigation
her
for. The other
need
thing
for
that
wrath.
the investigators felt strongly about was that whoever killed these individuals were very intimate with both the personal habits of the Rhodens and the residences themselves. So the reason they said that, again, I told you that Dana Rhoden and Hannah Mae and little Chris had just moved into that residence less than 30 days prior. So you had to know them well enough to know that, right? This kind of gets rid of the drug cartel idea, and other individuals who just wouldn't know that.
I'm
right?
very curious
But
how
they also knew
what
of
evidence
the
they
surveillance,
have
cameras, etc., that were located at each
of
these
the
places.
planning of all of
Located at each
this,
these places. Chris Senior's house had cameras.
aside from the confession, like what they had before
Cameras.
the
Those were
confessions
removed.
and the
So
arrests.
whoever
That's really
killed
what I'm
these people
curious
knew
about.
That, right? So again, that's
I mean,
what
Chicken Lady, Henlu
the
and
initial,
Jenlu need their snacks.
just
It is what it
processing of
is.
the
We like
crime scene
snacks.
indicated to investigators. In the meantime, of course, we're getting thousands of tips.
Snacks and naps.
Exaggeration. We had more than 1,000 tips.
Me too,
the,
Amelia. Me too. She's
multiple,
very, look,
everybody's
she's
going in
got to
all
be methodical
directions.
because it's a huge case, right? And there's a lot of moving
That
parts.
the Rhodens had been in an argument with a group of individuals,
But
and that group of individuals had threatened them
Bruh.
on Facebook. And then one of those individuals actually took credit for it after the homicides and claimed that they committed the homicides. That individual was found and interviewed, and that story quickly fizzled. So it was not those individuals. But, the investigators considered everybody, right? We talked about, I guess, the building that you saw there, where we had you look up the stairs, that would have been right beside the residence, had a marijuana grow in it at Chris Senior's location. And there was a smaller version of that at Kenneth's. So of course the investigators ran down, and every lead, related to anybody any of these individuals would have dealings with. We also did tower dumps. Tower dumps just tell you what phones.
yeah,
are getting
mine
on
is
what
too,
towers
Amelia.
at the
Like,
time
it's
of the
fine for her to
homicides.
be methodical, but if she would just be a little bit
And,
more
you just kind of
impassioned.
trap and preserve that information. Back to the shoe print stuff, we knew that was a Walmart shoe. We knew what kind of Walmart shoe it was. And so we got video footage of all Walmart, anybody who purchased a size 10.5 or 11 in between the months of January 2016 and April 2016 in a 50-mile radius of the crime scene. So lots of
Just
Walmarts
FYI,
that we got video
anything
footage from,
that
anybody
you
who,
purchased with the
purchased
scan,
that,
that's how
because
they
we
found
knew
it, the barcode.
this-
That's how
those
they be
shoes
tracking
belonged
that stuff down.
who killed these individuals. Another thing that we could tell about the shoes was that they were new. That immediately upon examination of the prints that were left at the scene, our expert was able to tell us that was either never worn or nearly never worn. So we were looking, that's why we only asked for that kind of time frame, right? So a lot was, we were able to learn just from the physical evidence.
Now, see, that goes
at least
into
as
the
far as what we're
methodical
looking for.
planning that it would take to pull
So
something
what
like
finally
this
turned our
off.
attention to the Wagners.
Yes, thank you.
Um,
Let's get to that because that's what we
When
want to
Jake
know.
Wagner was initially interviewed, pretty early in the investigation, he indicated that everything was just dandy between he and Hannah Mae. And it wasn't until we got back those Facebook records and some of the text messaging that we found that was not the case, right? So we're seeing these messages where she's saying that. So that contradicted what he was saying. She was confronting him about being violent. We also saw that, the message between Tabitha's mom. Additionally, Billy Wagner was interviewed, and he indicated that we were asking everybody for their phones just to, because they had interactions with the victims. We wanted to get their phones just to kind of see if we could piece anything together. And he indicated that he did not have the phone that he had at the time of the homicides because he kept trying to call Chris Sr. because Chris Sr. was his best friend. And after the homicides, he kept trying to call him, and he finally got frustrated and upset one day and broke his phone. Well, that was a good story, but it wasn't true, because we have phone records that indicate he never once tried to call Chris Sr. And in fact, we had the phone calls to Billy Wagner at that
George
10:55 p.m.
is the
that was never
son
returned, by
of
Billy Wagner.
Angela and
So
Billy
that didn't
Wagner.
add up.
Billy Wagner
Additionally, there was a
is
story
George
that Billy
Wagner.
Wagner put
The
out what we would call a
guy
false
on trial is
story,
George
which
Wagner
was that
the fourth.
Billy
and
and Chris were
George-
supposed to do some big
Jake
drug
is the
deal
youngest
out in
Wagner
California
brother.
for upwards of $800,000, and that Skid Montgomery, who supposedly
And he
went
has
in on
already
that,
taken a
found
plea.
out, and Skid Montgomery's the one who killed Chris Rhoden, and that Billy was probably next. That didn't make any sense either, because obviously Billy was not dead, and nor was he hiding at that time. So again, just kind of little things like that was enough for us to look a little bit harder at the Wagners. And the real question was, we knew that Hannah had told Tabitha's mom that she would not sign papers ever.
I guess I should
That
have
they
read
would
your
have to kill
question
her
better.
first.
And 5, 6, 7, 8, they're brothers. He's the
But did
he's the
Wagners
youngest
know
brother.
that? And
He's
if
the
they
little
did know
brother, I
that,
should
is that enough motive for them to kill the Rhodens? And the answer to both questions, unfortunately, is yes. They did know about the message, and yes, that was sufficient motive for them to kill Hannah Mae and her family. After we started focusing on the Wagners, we knew we needed to do some search warrants. Jake Wagner had been playing kind of dodge the ball with Special Agent Scheider as far as turning over his phone as well. He still had a phone, but he was not turning it over to us. So we decided we needed to get a search warrant for that phone to collect it from Jake Wagner. So upon serving that search warrant to Jake Wagner and getting his phone, this was right before they went to Alaska. They went to Alaska in May of 2017. And
So a little over a year
he
after the
obviously
crime
had kept
occurred.
turning the heat up on them, and they could tell that. I just indicated that Special Agent Scheider had been trying to get the phone from Jake and had been unable to do so. While he was there serving the search warrant for the phone upon Jake at 260 Peterson Road, Special Agent Scheider noticed shell casings, lots and lots of shell casings in the driveway. Now, again, 260 Peterson Road, when you walk up to the old barn, and then when you're kind of parallel to it, that's where he saw a lot of the shell casings. And we decided to get a search warrant for those, to collect those. In the event that any of them were the same or similar to what had been used at the crime scene. So we went out and executed that search warrant on the day that the Wagners actually left to go to Alaska, and found a shell casing that Matt White said was a match to the .22 caliber shell casings that were recovered from the crime scenes at Frankie's house and at Dana's house, as in fired from the
You're
same
welcome, sweetie.
weapon. Not just similar, but the actual gun that killed Dana and Hannah and little Chris and Frankie and Hannah Hazel had also been fired out at 260 Peterson Road. We returned the following day with more agents and the STAR team, and combed the area looking for any other shell casings. These shell casings were clearly weathered. They weren't recent. And we ended up with, I believe, 12 shell casings that were compared. There were many more, but there were 12 that were compared by Matt White to the 5 shell casings that we had from 6, from the crime scenes, and they were direct matches. So now we knew that one of the Wagners, or someone that had shot the weapon out at the Wagners, had also shot and killed at least 5 of our victims. The conclusions that Matt White made was these comparisons revealed matching individual firing pin impression characteristics, confirming the 18 fired 22 rimfire cartridge cases were fired in the same firearm. But something else happened that day as well. We were approached by a neighbor, and the neighbor told us that the Wagners had put all their belongings in some trailers, and they had parked the trailers up off of State Route 41, which we went to as well. That was the place where we kind of drove down a side road and we had to look through a yard. It was the very last thing we did, I think, on the second day of jury view. And you looked back towards a white big house and just vast property, basically. So having learned that, we first confirmed that there were in fact trailers up there. And then we went and got a search warrant in order to search those trailers. And you will see pictures of this. It is truly a needle in a haystack, but there were several trailers, and in searching, literally took everything off of the trailers and searched through them. There was a tub of important things. It was labeled that. And inside that tub was a receipt. A receipt dated April 7th, I believe. Yes, April 7th of 2016 for 2 pairs of athletic shoes from Walmart. So just 2 weeks prior to the homicides, we have a receipt in the Wagner's property of someone purchasing shoes. We don't know yet if they're the shoes, right? But we definitely are going to check this out. We do that. We send an agent to Walmart with the receipt so that he can get find out from Walmart what shoe this is based on the SKU numbers or whatever. And simultaneously, we send a CIU individual to our command post, which was out at the A plant.
They spent all of this time
footage,
planning it.
Bank of video footage that we had, if you recall, that we collected from Walmart, but
not planning how not to get caught.
And
I'm glad they got caught, though.
To pull up the video from Waverly Walmart on that same day at the same time of that receipt, and Angela Wagner was in Walmart purchasing a 10.5 and an 11 size in the identical shoe that was left at the crime scene. Meantime, our special agent was able to confirm with Walmart that it was in fact a 10.5 and an 11 of that shoe. So that was a very important find. The other thing that we found was a typed up list of demands for Hannah Mae regarding Sophia, about who was allowed to watch her, who wasn't allowed to watch her, how she would be schooled, she would be homeschooled, all these other things that she had to abide by, that was typed up by Jake Wagner. Another discovery at the time were custody documents. And by custody documents, I mean documents that one would fill out so that if anything happened to you.
Oh, hey, Super Mama D, welcome.
Right. So
this is where they get me, Ma, y'all.
There were documents that purported to be signed by Hannah Mae that said, if I die, I want my child to go to Jake.
I don't know if she actually goes by Meemaw. Meemaws are what we call them here in the South.
To go to Jake Wagner, the person that I, have such issues with. That piece of paper was dated as if Hannah Mae had signed it on December 24th of 2014, Christmas Eve, 2014, which was really the last holiday that she spent with the Wagners, right? Because she left in early 2015. And the problem with that, first of all, was that our handwriting people looked at it and said that Hannah Mae likely did not sign that thing. We had a very recent signature of hers when she applied for a driver's license and compared it to the signature that was on there. But more importantly, let me see if I can fly through this and get you to it. Sorry.
Are you going to zoom? What's happening? This is not a, ma'am.
More importantly,
Okay. Here we go.
you're right. If your eyes can see this, then good for you.
Can you make it
It was
bigger?
printed off the computer on April 3rd of 2016.
Oh,
That piece of paper didn't even exist until April 3rd of 2016, so it could not have been filled out in December of 2014. You will also
See,
learn
y'all?
that-
your computer be snitching
I
on you.
won't get ahead of myself. But so we knew that that had been backdated, right? We knew that she could not have signed that in 2014 because the paper didn't even exist until 2016. And
The
again,
physical paper,
April 3rd of 2016,
or you went through the computer and it was through the
just a little over
document
2
search
weeks
you
before the
found when it
homicide,
was
they're printing
created.
This out so that if Hannah Mae would unexpectedly meet the end, Sophia would go to Jake. But there were 2 other documents that we found on that day.
Which is interesting
Which
because
are
she
extremely
actually wouldn't need to do something like that
There
if
were
he's
2
on the birth
documents,
certificate.
One that Jake filled out and one that George filled out. And they were dated, I believe, in 2015, March of 2015, instead of December of 2014.
Oh dear.
But they said for Jake's, if he dies, Sophia goes to Angela Wagner, not Hannah Mae. Almost like they knew Hannah Mae wasn't going to be alive. That's one.
It is. It
George
is
Wagner
Super
also
Mama D. We're
filled
not,
out
none of us in this chat are,
that
impressed,
if
but
something happens to him
we're all just getting through it
on
together.
the night of the murders, Bullvine, his child, will go to his mother. So they were anticipating whether they got arrested, caught in the middle of the act, or something worse. They wanted to make sure that custody of their children was secure. On April 3rd of 2016, all 3 of those documents were printed out and filled out and signed. And you will learn that as well from further evidence. We also found other things like a brass catcher and a bug detector and other items that were of obvious interest. That led us to wanting to have conversations with the Wagners and confronting them with this information, right? So we went to the border in Montana because they had
Bethy
traveled to
Cakes.
Alaska. They drove to Alaska.
Wait.
And they drove through Canada.
Oh, okay.
They actually left through North Dakota. But when they came back through Sweetgrass, Montana. And so we went up there and confronted them, and most telling of the things that we confronted you could tell they had a canned response for a lot of things. They knew that we had used metal detectors out at their house. So they had a response for that. Canned response, all said the same thing. But when confronted with the shoes, clearly not expecting that confrontation, Angela admitted to buying those shoes for her boys. However, she said that they hated the shoes because they were old grandpa shoes. Quite honestly, they are. And she threw them away the same day because she didn't like them. Never mind, she had the receipt. Now, I will say they were only like $13.97 per pair. But if you had taxes in 2 pair, that's $30. You could have easily gotten back if you just returned it. But she says those shoes couldn't have been used in the murders because she threw them away the same day she bought them for boys because they hated them.
I mean, I don't know
And
anybody
the
that
video
wears
footage also
Velcro
shows
shoes
that
after
there were other individuals in the
1987, but that's
vehicle,
just me. I don't want to
when she
judge.
bought those shoes, and you will learn later that it was in fact Jake and George and the two children, young children as well. While the Wagners were at the border, we also installed a listening device in the vehicle that they were driving.
Oh.
So we touched on this in voir dire about
I don't know
citizens'
they
right to
did all
privacy,
this.
certainly. But at this point, we had an overwhelming amount of evidence that was pointing us
They done
to
bugged their
action to
cars.
believe that the Wagner family, Jake,
Or
George,
residences or whatever.
and Billy were involved in the murder of 8 individuals. We had to coordinate that with other states, and we're able to do that. The most interesting thing about that device that was installed in the vehicle, so imagine, if you will, 4 individuals being surprised at a Montana border, agents putting them in separate rooms, and BCI walking
Bethy,
in
I
and
think they got her on video.
Ohio BCI people walking in and
Hi, Nosy Nana. How you doing, babe?
First, Billy and Angela get back in the vehicle. First, Billy gets in the vehicle. He's released first, and then Angela gets in the vehicle. Not a word. Not a word about, oh my gosh. Can you believe that happened? What they think we did this? No conversation like that at all. No conversation at all about what just happened. And then George comes out, and then Jake comes out, and then they're released and free to go. We find out later that there's a reason for that, because Billy had told them that, be quiet. There's a listening device. Other records are coming back as well. At the Montana border, we seized a laptop.
Yes,
in the
I'm going
possession
back
of,
to my original
Angela
statement
Wagner.
that this is the Firefly
But we
family.
found that it was used by all of the Wagners. We had financial records that came back. We had phone records. that
Uh-oh,
came back,
nonstop, Mom.
Phone records from Jake's phone that we had got the search warrant for. Financial records revealed purchases.
Nothing will happen,
of
babe.
parts to make a homemade silencer.
So they prepared for listening devices, but kept receipts and stuff. Man.
And going backwards. So from February to March of 2016, you show purchases of 2 flashlights, drill bits, tap and die, freeze plugs that act as baffles. So this is just a open source video that shows you how to make a silencer out of a mag light. Mag lights has serial numbers. It's actually a way to make it if you can apply to ATF to make it. And that's why they have the serial number on the mag lights, is because for legitimate purposes. You see there in the upper right hand corner is The Walking Dead. Used mag light silencers because
It's the apocalypse.
if
And
you kill a zombie and they hear it, then the other zombies come. So
also,
and
it's
you
the
will learn
apocalypse, and you
that,
have to be
Jake
handy.
avid,
Hey, Lycan, what's
Walking
up?
Dead, watcher. So
Okay, I don't
show
think we should be
purchases
judging just based
of
on the fact they watch The Walking Dead. A lot of people watch
items
The
to make a
Walking
homemade
Dead.
silencer for both a .22 caliber weapon. You can tell based on the size of the drill bits and the tap and die, and a 40 or 30 caliber weapon.
Okay, this
So,
lady
and
is
again,
literally
we'll hear
going
from
through
ATF
every
about
single
this.
thing that this investigation
They
turned
will
up
give you
ever.
information about
Oh boy.
how you make a homemade silencer. We show 2 masks purchased by George on April 9th of 2016.
All right, I'll be right back. I'm just going to mute, but I'll be in the
We
chat. So
show
behave.
Jake,
Just
at
kidding.
least his awards card being used, to buy 7.62 ammo and a magazine for an SKS, also in April. There was a phone jammer purchased by Angela. A phone jammer jams signals for phones. So say you're gonna go murder 8 people and you don't want them to be able to call for help, then you have a phone jammer on your person and it jams the signals. It's actually illegal because it can interfere with aircraft and such. So, but that was purchased, and a bug detector was purchased by Angela. There were the financial records also just confirm what we already knew, which was this is a very, they function as one unit in pretty much everything they do. Financially is no exception. The house in Peterson Road was in both Jake and George's name. Angela lived there with them. They interchangeably used each other's credit cards and account, PayPal accounts or Amazon accounts or whatever. And we showed George buying fuel filters from OK Auto Parts on April 18th of 2016, and that will come into play later. Phone records revealed a list of guns that Jake had made, and the gun list includes an SKS belonging to George Wagner. It was a list of all the guns that the Wagners owned and who owned them or who they belonged to, right? There was a little cricket that belonged to Sophia. There was an SKS that belonged to George, and there was a 1911 22 that belonged to Jake. So this was just a list that he had made in 2015 of phones that they just kind of a inventory of the phones that they did. We also learned that both Jake and George dyed their hair the week of the homicides, dyed it very dark. Now, again, this is kind of an oddity, but Jake Wagner fancied himself a Norman Reedus lookalike. Norman Reedus is the actor who plays Daryl on The Walking Dead. He also plays in another movie called Boondock Saints. You will hear more information about this in the course of the trial. So again, please follow the court's order and don't go home and watch it. Only consider what you hear here. But Boondock Saints is the story of 2 brothers who are vigilante killers. Kill people we need killed, right? And they're justified. And they say scripture over the last guy right before they kill him. And their dad, in Boondock Saints 2, the dad also joins in. The 2 brothers, one of the brothers is played by Norman Reedus, okay? So this becomes important when, again, we're examining Jake's phone, and we find that at 7:06 p.m. on the night of the homicides, he Googles and watches a scene from Boondock Saints 2. It's called the Ding Dong Motherfucker scene, okay? It's not even one of the brothers in the scene, but he's got 1911 22s with silencers on them, and utter some profanities, like they're arriving to kill these people, right? They watched that at 7 o'clock the night before they left to go kill these 8 people. That's important because for whatever reason, they take a lot of their cues from the homemade silencer from The Walking Dead and dyed their hair to look like the brothers in Boondock Saints. And of course, presumably to throw off any forensic evidence that might be gathered if they were to leave behind a hair. We also seized a laptop, I told you that. When we were able to finally look at that laptop, we found the answer to our question of, we knew that Hannah Mae had said, they will have to kill me first. But did the Wagners know that? And the laptop demonstrated that yes, in fact they did, because Tabitha Wagner in 2015, around about April of 2015, had started pushing for visitation of her son. And when she wasn't getting it, she consulted with an attorney, and she was following the attorney's instructions and trying to get like Wednesdays and every other weekend to start with. The Wagners weren't having that. And so Angela Wagner was hacking into the Facebook accounts of Tabitha and Tabitha's mother. And you will learn that at some point, they had insisted on getting that password from Tabitha. And apparently she had not changed it, or they remained logged in, or whatever enabled them to continue doing that. But the purpose for that hacking was to get dirt or information on Tabitha to use against her during any custody proceedings, if in fact she did initiate custody proceedings, right? So during this process of Angela hacking into this Facebook to gather stuff for George, in the event that Tabitha initiates this custody thing, they see this message between Hannah Mae and Tabitha's mom that was meant to be private, obviously, but they say that. The screenshot, so there's a screenshot of this, right? So that's how we knew that they were seeing it, because she would take screenshots because she was going to use that in court, right? The screenshot was practically real time. It was taken almost immediately after the messages occurred. So there was some active monitoring of that going on. And I have to say, note, probably the most important word in that is she says, I won't sign papers ever. They will have to kill me first. Not Jake will have to kill me first. They will have to kill me first. Because she knew how the Wagners operated. She talked about the fact of how they did Tabitha that night and how they were trying to lure her back into the house. And they had a gun on the coffee table. So she very much understood how the Wagners operated as a group. The last thing that we got from, probably not the last thing, but another significant thing that we got from Jake, the backup of Jake's phone on that laptop, was a picture of him holding a 1911. Let's see if I can get us there. Yep, went the wrong way again.
I do it a lot too, like,
So
and
you see in the
especially
upper
when
left-hand
I'm
corner, there's a
talking
picture of
and
the
reading
1911
chat,
on carpet, which
it
was
causes a lot of
consistent on carpet inside of 260 Peterson. And then there's a later photo of him holding the weapon.
You guys should all watch Boondock Saints. It's
You
on
can see the
HBO
tattoo.
Max
Down there, there's just a close-up
and
of the tattoo
Paramount,
on
I
Max's
think.
finger. You can see it in that first picture, close out. Additionally,
I'll tell
they were
you.
able
Let me
to
Google
take
out real quick because I like to be helpful.
prints from
Because
the
they're
photo
fantastic movies, and we've
compare it
been
to
waiting
known prints
forever
of Jake Wagner
for the third one.
and confirmed that
All
it
right,
was
hold
in
on.
fact his hand. That was taken by his phone.
Let me
so we
look.
assume that anyhow, especially with all the other indications. But at that point, we believed we had the murder weapon, or at least one of the murder weapons in Jake's hand. Another thing, another investigative tool that we did was monitoring their phones, their phone conversations, both in 2017 and in 2018, both summers. 2017 being when they first went to Alaska, 2018 being when they came back from Alaska. We also installed listening devices.
I
in
liked the second
the
one.
truck that Jake and George drove together. They
Not
worked
as
for
much as I
R&L,
liked the first
and
one, but
they
I
were
liked the
tandem
second
driving.
one.
So while one was sleeping, the other was driving, or at least
It's on Pluto, Tubi, Vudu, Amazon Prime. It's all free.
Were awake at the same time.
So there you go. Number
but,
2 is on HBO Max. So
Also, I forgot to mention that we had done a search warrant on the Flying W shortly after we did a search warrant on Peterson Road and then the 41 that led us to State Route 41.
So the Flying
There we found
W
2
is where the
bulletproof
grandmother
vests,
lived, the
in possession
Grandma
of Gilley
Wagner. Mima
and,
Wagner.
Numerous weapons, I want to say 14, but numerous weapons that were not in Billy's room. He had asked Robin to keep them in her room in the event of something like a search warrant. She did acknowledge to us that they were his weapons. But what we noticed most in the 2017 time that we were monitoring their conversations was that they were constantly reminding each other not to talk on the phones and not to say anything because they're probably listening to us, or wait until you get home so we can talk about it. So it was clear that they were trying to thwart any efforts of listening to them.
Well,
One of the
obviously, I
most
mean, people
significant things that we heard in 2017
don't generally
however,
want to be
was
caught.
when we brought ground penetrating radar machines in there to try to look for any buried weapons or cell phones or anything, because I neglected to mention that they took
I
lot
haven't
of the
watched that
victims'
yet,
cell
but it's on my
phones,
list. Like, and
when they committed these homicides.
I have a lot
Not
on my
Frankie and
list.
Not Hazel, but everybody else they took their phones.
Ooh, and just while I'm thinking about it, and you're here,
while we were
including
out there
Dracula
and we
on
were listening to
Netflix.
conversations, Jake was having conversations with the new homeowner, because they had sold the property at 260 Peterson Road, and the new homeowner, who was still the current owner, that was his first day of possession when we came out there. And so Jake was talking to him saying, basically you can kick them off if you want to. And, but Angela was asking Jake which barn, because they could tell we were searching it, for metal. And she kept saying, which barn?
I'm going to watch the new Thor one
very
too.
important to her. You could tell
It's on Disney
to
Plus.
just, to learn which barn we were searching. So that was one conversation that was.
I know, Super Mama D. We're all kind of like, oh.
Very telling, and made us also wonder what was so important about a barn. In 2018, I think we had much more success listening to the conversations, and you will get to hear some of these conversations or hear the content of these
Notice the
conversations.
difference in
But I think
chairs.
that
I
is
wonder
because
who
we
you had
kind
to
of
be
laid
to get
low
the
for
comfy
the year
chairs.
that they were
That
in
poor lady
Alaska,
with the folding
and
chair. You
they
know
didn't
that's got to be
realize we were still
uncomfortable
doing
after
stuff,
2.5
because we hadn't been
hours.
interacting with them. And so when we first kind of tuned in, we got a more organic conversation.
So am
But it
I
was
liking.
right
Be
back to
patient,
kind of
because
the
it'll probably
same
either be
MO,
on Paramount or Peacock.
George and Angela were scolding Jake because Jake had married a girl in Alaska, Beth Ann. He married her, and then she traveled with them back to Ohio. They had stopped briefly to try to get a home in Missouri, but the loan people weren't going to approve that. So they came back to Ohio and moved into the residence of Angela's father, who had passed while they were in Alaska. And so she inherited that home. So it was, free room and board. So, but Beth Ann had come back with them, and George and Angela were very upset with Jake.
No,
because
Super
Jake
Mama
had
D.
told Sophia
There
that she
isn't.
could call Beth Ann mom. And the reason that upset them was because both Bullvine and Sophia considered Angela to be their mom, and that this was going to cause great confusion to Bullvine, because he thinks Sophia is his sister and that Angela is their mom and all this stuff.
What?
And so, Jake was accused of being selfish and inconsiderate, etc.
I mean, can we just acknowledge that they named their child
Beth
Bovine?
Ann also gives us a very good.
Uh-oh. What happened? Well, can y'all still hear me? Okay, good. I'm still going. It's just theirs. Holy guacamole. I don't know why it's buffering like this. Hold on.
Their investigative tool. Sophia is his sister, and that Angela is their mom, and all this stuff. And so, Jake was accused of being selfish and inconsiderate,
Let's see if that fixes it.
etc.
Probably won't, but I'm going to try it.
Bethian also.
The Wagners are using their jammers. Lordy. I guess we'll just have to be patient. Not one of my virtues. I mean, y'all, they're only up to 2007. In her opening statement, they're only up to 2017. Okay. The Wagner family wasn't arrested until 2018. So I think it's about 45 minutes to an hour per year of events that occurred. I'm not sure how she's doing this, but holy guacamole, like every single detail is being gone over, which I understand. Okay, there's part of me that knows they got to do it really methodically because this is a complicated case. There's a lot of moving parts. There's multiple people involved, yada, 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 right? I get that part. But this might be, and normally I love extra, but this is extra in a way that I'm not enjoying. Also, so with the Boondock Saints, too, okay, that scene is actually a really good scene. It's one of the better scenes in Boondock Saints. All of them, like, I don't know how to say this that will be YouTube appropriate, but I think you can take my meaning because I'm concerned about YouTube appropriateness. Those are all the action scenes. Those are all really good scenes. Even though, and I don't care, Julie Benz, in my opinion, ruined that movie. Like, she is no William Dafoe faux show. And that's all I'll say about that. But they are good movies. Just, oh my gosh.
Sophia is his sister, and that Angela is their mom,
What?
and all this. Sophia
Hold on.
is his sister, and that Angela is their mom, and all this stuff. And so, Jake was accused of being selfish and inconsiderate, etc.
I wonder if I stop sharing and then start sharing, if it will be better. Oh, Lycan, you're going to appreciate this. Rewind to the very beginning of the live just while we're kicking it. And Law and Crime Network has a new graphic. It's quite fancy, and I actually like it. All right, hold on. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to stop sharing. All right. And then I'm going to reload and see what's happening. Oh, it's buffering for everybody. Okay, it's not just me. Well, I'm not going to do what the IT people always recommend. I'm not going to turn it off and turn it on again and see if that helps, because that never helps. All right, hold on. We'll just be patient. She needs to take a leaf out of, what was that trial that we watched where even even though I had her sped up, like she was, but she was a fast talker anyway. I feel like it might have been Tote that was the fast. Thank you, M5678. I appreciate that. Finally, it's not me, it's them. It's a good feeling, I guess. Although we're all sitting here kind of just waiting. But yeah, she needs to take a page out of that prosecutor's book. Like, ugh. There was something else I was going to comment about. Oh, the shoes. So now I find that very, very interesting and goes to and I know why she brought it up, but I wish that she would have, even though opening statements aren't evidence, okay? I think it's interesting that the jury asked if they could take notes during opening statements. And opening statements, obviously they're like, you're going to lay out your case. Not every single point like this woman is doing, but the key points of the case, right? And in my opinion, she should have been made more of a big deal about the shoes, because that is a key point in not only connecting the Wagners to the crime, but then also
before they consummated the marriage.
The amount of premeditation that took.
On her phone. Angela Wagner hired a private investigator to learn more about her. Jake tells her, don't have your family come around here. Don't even tell them where you live, because if they show up, I'd hate to have to kill somebody else.
Oh,
or somebody. Sorry, he did not say somebody else. But again, just kind of that isolate the women, control them, monitor them. And then these accusations and threats. Simultaneously, we were presenting information to a grand jury. We had Rita Newcomb, which is Angela Wagner's
bro, we're
mother,
not even going to get
come
to
down and
the
give us a
defense's
handwriting
opening
sample
statements
along with
before
Angela Wagner,
lunch.
because on the custody documents, you will see that Rita Newcomb was the notary public, or the presumed notary public. Found out later that that was not the case, that Angela had also forged her mother's name.
Yep, got Mima in trouble.
As the notary, but at that time we did not yet know that. And we also got shoe sizes and impressions of Jake and Billy and George Wagner. Are we on time?
You're good? You think you're good?
You break for you right now. I think if that's okay.
Council approach here just a minute.
Okay, this is awkward because first of all, it's 11:40 and they're on East Coast time too. Ohio is, so we're all on the same page here. And typically lunch, is noon to noon 30. And now they're just wanting to take their first morning break in the middle of opening statements, which is odd to me. So yeah, I don't know what they're doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're due to the hour right now. It would be time to take a break, maybe a little past time. However, if we did just take our 15-minute break, then it's going to be pretty choppy between now and a lunch, or you're going to have to eat lunch at 4 o'clock. So we're going to take a lunch break now until 1 o'clock. You're all on your own for lunch, but you do need to time yourselves to be back here. I would say about 5 minutes early. Be down at the jury room on the first floor. You'll be brought up from there by some court personnel. You're going to hear me give you this admonition several times during the course of this trial. However, even
Hold
if
on a
I
minute.
neglect to do it, this admonition.
Basically, he's going to tell them they're not allowed to talk to anybody and they can't talk to each other. La, la, la. So let me get this straight. These jury members are on their own. They're going to be at this trial for 6 to 8 weeks. Okay. And they have to get their own lunch. Every trial we've watched, have you guys noticed that lately? I'm incensed as well, Mo. This is ridiculous. Get them lunch for Pete's sake. I mean, is there like a room for them if they want to bring their lunch? Because obviously they're not sequestered. This is I've never seen such. I am outraged that they don't even get lunch. My background? I just like true crime and I like talking about it. And I'm not qualified in any professional capacity. Like I hold no degrees or certifications, but I just am fascinated by every aspect of true crime, from the actual crime itself, because I like to know the why people do what they do, what causes people to cross the line between thinking and doing. And then I like the investigation part of the true crime, where the detectives collect all the evidence and all the analyzing of the evidence and all of that. And then I love an interrogation, but I also love a trial, because that's the end, right, of the investigation. This is where the victim or victims in this case is going to get justice. And I really enjoy the back and forth between the lawyers for the defense, between the prosecutor and the defense. I love a good evidentiary argument. I love a good objection, and how they justify it. And that's really it. I just like doing this. I just find it fascinating. And I've been fascinated with this case. Now, I have to admit that I don't remember hearing about this case in 2016 when it occurred. That was a lot of sleeps ago. Okay. But I definitely 1,011 billion% remember the Oxygen special. And I watched it twice, actually, as I thought it was so interesting. And then I kind of kept up with it. And as there were new updates, the arrests, and then, the plea deal and all of that, I just sort of, watched it. Right. And then so I guess it would have been, it had to be July. Yes. So in July, they announced that they were having the jury pool. And I thought to myself, well, this is interesting, because they were planning, essentially it would have taken a month or longer, really. And they had initially set the trial to start August 29th. And I thought, what's the deal here with the whole taking so long to pick a jury pool? And then I found out that it was going to be extra, because they have 12 they're going to be seating 12, but there are actually 18 jurors that are listening, because they have 6 alternates, which is kind of a lot. And so I found that to be interesting. And then I found that they all had to be death penalty qualified, even though as part of, and don't start counting my even though they have to be death penalty qualified, even though in Jake Wagner's plea agreement, he has to testify to the satisfaction of the state and then the state will remove the death penalty from George Wagner IV, and then George Billy Wagner III, their father. So I found that to be interesting because I'm very interested in learning what the specifics are in the satisfaction of the state, because obviously if Jake gets up there and testifies, right, he's going to get up there and testify that George did not fire any guns. And which is interesting because didn't they say there were 3 different caliber guns used? So I'm sort of curious how all of yes, so which is interesting because I'm the dadgum opening statement was so long that it's kind of difficult to figure out or remember, quite honestly, not figure out, but remember if there were 3 different weapons used at all the crime scenes, or if it was like one kind of weapon used at one, two at another, you know what I mean? So that was, that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And then, yes, so to be a death penalty qualified juror, you have to agree that you are willing to consider the death penalty as punishment, and that you are not opposed, obviously, to the death penalty. So they have to go ahead and qualify these jurors just in case the state doesn't take the death penalty off the table here. Yeah, I had heard about it before, but not quite that way, not quite in that manner. I know that lots of states, obviously I'm from two of them really. I mean, I'm from Texas, but I live in Florida, both death penalty states, but I've never heard the term death penalty qualified before. I've never, I've heard of obviously juries being selected and polled, and all that business, right? And that there is the potential for the death penalty. But I suppose Ohio has its own way of doing things, as every state does. And basically, Tony, what it means is that the jury members are not opposed to the death penalty and would have no problem, no issue, no reservations in any way, shape, or form, like, I guess any reservations, I suppose that could be, personal, religious, whatever, right? About sentencing somebody to the death penalty. They have no objections. So yes, after the trial, okay, so let's say the trial is over and the jury finds the defendant guilty on all. He has a ton of counts of other stuff, but he's the main one obviously is the 8 counts of first degree murder. So then there's the penalty phase, right? And the jury would then listen to the arguments made by the state, why the death penalty should be considered, should it still be on the table. And then the defense will then introduce mitigating factors, why the death penalty should not be, he should not receive the death penalty in this case. Now, this is what I would suspect would be the argument for that. I would imagine that the argument from his defense attorneys against giving George the death penalty would be that, yes, he was there, but he did not actually participate in the firing of the guns that resulted in the loss of life, right? So that is really the only, then maybe because we're hearing a lot in the opening statement from the prosecutor about how the Wagner family functioned as a single unit. And even though they were obviously all individuals, and that included when the women or when the boys were either dating or when they were married, that the girlfriend and or wife then became part of everybody functioning as one unit. And it's really difficult when you have what amounts to be an outsider, right? So George the Fourth and Jake would have been raised this way, so it would have been nothing to them. They wouldn't really think about it, right? But if you're bringing new people into the equation, like Hannah Mae and Tabitha, and then the last wife, or Beth, right? That you sort of have to, it takes a minute for people to become indoctrinated into thinking and functioning that way. It's not something that's very commonplace anymore in the United States. And that's exactly what I think that's kind of where I was going, Super Mama D, is that another mitigating factor would be that Angela was so controlling that George the Fourth would have felt as if there were no choice. It was there was no other way. He had no choice. And I suppose they could argue that if the family, right, was set to do this, okay, and they weren't just set to get rid of Hannah, who was, to their minds, the issue. They were willing to go all in and annihilate an entire family and anybody who happened to be there at the time. So if you're sitting in on conversations like that, one could argue that you could be in fear for your life, because if they'll do it to them, they could do it to you, right? And then after the act is committed, then you're even more in fear for your life, because obviously they've gone through with their plan. And with the saying, those who will do it with you will do it to you. So perhaps that could be an argument, but I think this is just what I suspect is going to end up happening. I think that Jake is going to get up on that stand, and I think the state is going to say, okay, he's testified to our satisfaction, and they're going to remove the death penalty. I think that's probably what's going to happen, because moving forward. Okay. So let's say George Wagner the Fourth is convicted, right? And they take the death penalty, and then the time to take the death penalty off. See, if you get if you're convicted of a capital crime and you're sentenced to capital punishment, you have automatic appeals. Okay. So that costs money for the state, because they have to go through all of the appeals. And well, thank you. No, I just watch a lot and I learn a lot and I be paying attention. So I would think, in order to, you can still appeal your conviction, right? If you didn't get capital punishment, but if you have a capital punishment, the appeals process is just automatic. So it's a little different, and maybe the state will be saying, we're done with this case. And if he wants to appeal, cool, but we're not going to give him a situation where the appeals are automatic. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I'm thinking of this. But the thing that I'm the most interested in is, there's a couple of things. I want to know, I want to hear that the experts testify, obviously, but I want to hear, obviously, Jake and Angela testify. That's important, but not just their testimony, but their cross-examination, because that's interesting too. That's going to be interesting, I feel. Because if they do their job right, cross-examining, and they dismantle Jake's testimony, then I'm curious how that is going to play into the plea deal. So let's think about this. They get Jake up on the stand, right? He goes under direct testimony, then he's on cross-examination. And the defense attorney, whoever cross-examines him, does their job, which, to the fullest. And they do what they're supposed to do, which is really to break down his testimony, his direct testimony. Okay. And get him to slip up or trip up. Then how does that play into the plea deal, which is why I want to get my hands on that plea deal. So that's going to be interesting. Angela's testimony will also, and cross-examination will also be interesting. But what I'm really curious about is what in the world George the Fourth, what his defense is going to be. Because under the murder statute in Ohio, if you are there at the time that a crime is occurring and you don't, I don't think that they expect you to stop it, especially if there are weapons, especially guns, right? But if then after that crime, you don't do anything to report the crime, and we know that there was an investigation and they did, and George IV participated in all of the not helping with the investigation, right? I think that's going to be just what is the defense going to be? And that's really what I am very, very interested in hearing about. And Madam Prosecutor over here is taking 11 billion hours, and now it's lunchtime and I have to go because I still have stuff I have to do at the house, right? I'm running a household here, and I'm going to listen. Don't get me wrong. This is the trial, you guys. Normally what I do is I don't listen after I get off of here with you guys, and then I wait, and then I stream with you at night. I can't do that this time. I'm sorry, but I can't. Please don't hazmats. And I think also what I need to do is, given the lengthy opening statement, I'm not going to go over the beginning of the opening statement tonight, but I'm definitely going to go, we're going to watch the second half of it, or however much longer there is. And then obviously the defense. And then, but I'm going to, instead of being live at 9 Eastern, I feel like we're going to have to be live at 8 Eastern in order to get it all in, because now we're into September and everybody's kiddos, including mine, are back in school, and tonight is a school night. And so in order to get through what we need to get through and talk about what we need to talk about, I feel like 8 Eastern is what we need to do. So let me stop sharing at this black screen. That's ridiculous. Jen, come on. I'm very in all of this, and I can't think of a trial that I have been more interested in watching every single detail in a long time. But this one, no, not even the Depp Heard trial, because even with the Depp Heard trial, I skipped around a lot on my own watching it. Like some testimony, I was like, I can't, you know what I mean? But obviously when Johnny Depp and Amber Heard testified, you guys were here. I streamed it. Everybody streamed it. But yeah, that's even in the Depp Heard case, I wasn't as interested in hearing every single little detail, but this one I am, because I've been waiting for this for a while. So this is where I leave you guys. Oh, you're welcome, Mo. Thanks you guys all for being here. Thank you for being here, everybody. I appreciate it. If you would do me a favor, if you haven't already, give me a thumbs up on the stream. Much appreciated. And if you guys can think of anybody who's also as interested in this case as we all are, share it out. I love it when I get new people to watch and to talk and to chat with. We have a super cool chat. Everybody's really nice to each other, even when we disagree. We're not, like nasty about it. But yeah. So I will see all of you, hopefully all of you, back here at 8 p.m. Eastern to finish up day 1 of the trial. And hopefully we'll have a ton of, I'm sure we will. We're going to have a ton to talk about. All right. I hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday. Until I see you tonight, I will talk to y'all later. All right. Bye.